You ready?
Yeah, hang on. The formatting this is not going right. This is
Jeez. We've
only
been in
gonna,
here for like an hour already.
only gonna take a few minutes, I swear. No, I'm just playing. Hey guys, welcome to the Boys of Summer Fantasy Baseball Draft Recap Show. My name is Kyle Carbone. I am joined by my good pal Eric Follman. What's going on, Eric?
Not too much. Just hanging out, watching some baseball, enjoying the weekend. Can't complain. It's baseball's back. We got full stadiums in Texas. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're darn right. It's good to sit on the couch and watch football. It was never worse timing, or never better timing, I should say, than to have a 4-day weekend than this weekend to just sit around watching baseball and box score watch. I know a lot of the guys were hoping to get the draft in a little sooner so they could have their teams for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and we'll try and do that like Saturday before next year. But just scheduling difficulties this year didn't quite work out. But that's definitely, I know, something that we'll want to do next year as well.
For sure. And in the future, we don't have to worry about the draft being as long. That'll be really, I mean, every 3 years, the draft will probably be a little bit longer just because that's when a lot of players come up. But I don't think in the history of the league, it'll technically ever be that long again, correct? The way the league's formatted?
No, there's no way. And I don't anticipate any more hour-long intermissions in the middle either.
Yeah, in the middle. How about right at the end when we thought there was 20 minutes left?
Yeah. And then so each team gets to keep 12 players for next year. So, I mean, that's taking out 160 something picks, 168 picks, I believe. Next year that will no longer be had if everyone keeps 12, but you don't have to keep 12. So It should go a lot quicker next year, no doubt.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it'll be, and that's going to be fun too. I think, speaking of doing these shows, I don't know if we're going to do them throughout the season as kind of shows that we can kind of keep tabs on the league on, but I think even next year it'll be fun, even if we did a pre-draft show of who we think should be kept or not kept, just kind of like those fringe players and stuff like that, because that adds another element to the league next year on, there's that deadline for that keeper date, like who you're going to keep, who you're not going to keep. And I think that could be kind of a fun show to do as well.
We'll have to see what the demand is from the people.
We'll see what the ratings are, right? We'll see what the ratings are.
We got to see our YouTube views. We'll have to speak to our sponsors, Ticonderoga Pencils and Tab Cola. See if they'll provide us some extra funding to make some extra shows, and we'll see if we can make it happen. Eric, right off the top, what are your instant reactions from the first 4 days of baseball we've had so far? Who's standing out to you? What's standing out to you?
Man, I'm loving it so far. Well, obviously the Cubs are looking okay. They're not looking too bad. That first game scared me. I mean, I never put too much stock into those first few games just because it is what it is. But I'm enjoying it, man. I mean, it's pretty cool seeing the Blue Jays get off to their start. I've been following a lot of their young players for a while to see Bo, and I mean Bo, Vlad, and Biggio, all famous MLB dads, and they're literally in the infield for Toronto. And that's just going to be such a fun team. Simeon seems like he's off to a good start. They got Springer coming in. That division's going to be fun to watch this year. But Ohtani, I mean, come on, hardest hit ball, hardest thrown pitch on the season. How do you not like that?
Absolutely. He's definitely a polarizing player.
And who was that against too? I couldn't remember. Do you remember who that was against yesterday?
It was a specific team from a specific city. Sorry, leave. It starts with a C and ends with a cog. Or in the middle is a cog and ends in an O. But that's going to be the Chicago White Sox is who that was against, I believe.
Oh, the second team from Chicago. That's right. I forgot. I sometimes forget they have two.
Citizens of Chicago, the Chicago White Sox and their fans. Just really just the scrum of the city. Not a whole lot to say about Chicago White Sox. Their players, their fans, their stadium. It's in the middle of the slums. You can't even go to the game without bringing a gun.
Watch out.
Yeah, there's not a lot of good things to say about the Southsiders.
Not at all. And
so then, that's definitely exciting to see them coming up in last place in their division right now, I think. Is there anyone below them in the division?
I don't think so. And they do, who do they play next? I think they play the really, really tough Mariners coming up in this next series. So like they got to watch out because the Mariners are destined to probably lose 90 ball games, 100 ball games themselves. So I mean, tough schedule at the start for those White Sox. Hopefully they can rebound.
Actually, breaking news, the Chicago White Sox are in sole possession of last place in the AL Central. The vaunted AL Central that has the Tigers, the Royals, and the Indians.
Studs.
Just this is the elite class of the MLB right now. So the White Sox really have it tough this year.
Especially with the Tigers and Royals being tied for first right now too. I mean, class of the division, no doubt about it.
You really hate to see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, Eric. We are kind of changing the format of the league last year. We had about 90% of the league is coming back from last year. We did things a little different. We were full roto last year. This year we're switching to half roto, half head-to-head. Early returns, say people are kind of liking the format. It's different than anything we've done before. You can't really just look up rankings online anymore because it's kind of a mix of both. You kind of got to make your own rankings. What are your early returns been from the league format we're kind of trying this year?
I'm liking it. I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, I think it's like when we discussed it, it's really the best of both worlds because you can see, okay, which guys really built the best teams if you're looking at it from a roto perspective, but then you still have the fun of the playoffs, who gets in, who's fighting for those spots late in the year. I think it's going to make the trade deadline a hell of a lot more interesting for teams that are the 7th and 8th best team. I think in a rotisserie, if it was just strictly rotisserie, you know, those teams might not be making those moves as much. So I think it's fun. You get to see who really the best teams assembled are each year, and then we still get to have the fun playoffs, the trash talking, the divisions, and like I said, I think we, pun intended, hit a home run with the format.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. For those wondering where you can view the roto standings, you go to the standings button. And Eric, can you see my screen right now?
Yes. Yep.
You'll go to the standings button in here, and at the top here, you'll go to season stats. And here's where you guys can find your roto rankings for the year. The roto rankings pay out first place through third place. And then the head-to-head champion will be a sole winner. Will take home $500 of the head-to-head portion. So it's championship or bust for the head-to-head, which I think is going to really get some guys' juices flowing throughout the
That'll
year.
Be fun.
In the
right.
playoffs.
No participation trophies, just
no
you're coming first. And just on cue, if you didn't notice, just on cue, the last place team makes sense. I know we're only 3 days in, but it makes perfect sense going off last year, so we're looking good early. So we'll see if that holds.
Yeah, this is expert Eric Follman coming at you live.
Yes.
Here. He is just fantasy baseball analyst and expert. We're so lucky to have him here on the pod because his expertise is just unmatched when it comes to fantasy
especially
baseball.
After last year's performance. I don't think we could have a better person beside you right now. I mean, I know my shit.
Absolutely. So before we get rolling into our rankings and everything like that, I do want to take a little bit of time and just talk about some common frequently asked questions that we've had throughout the league, just because I know we're going to get some guys listening to this, and I want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, knows the little intricacies, knows all the mini rules that we have in here to kind of keep the value of players, to keep kind of the league flowing, and I don't want anyone to be caught by surprise. So first thing I want to talk about is transactions. Whenever you drop a player, or a player comes up on the waiver wire, anyone you add or drop can no longer be kept the following year. Their salary will automatically turn into a C salary, meaning that they have no years of eligibility left. An A player has 2 years left, a B player has 1 year left, and then a C player means he'll be a free agent after next year. So don't be careful when you guys are dropping those guys, those good values. I've seen quite a few transactions so far, and I was just hoping that everybody knew what they were doing with some of these guys that were dropped. I see Griffin Canning was dropped, Tapia was dropped, Solano was dropped, and guys that may have been able to be kept for next year, but now they will automatically be in the draft next year. Eric, do you have any comments on that?
So theoretically, hot shot prospect comes up in June that no one's heard of. He sets the league on fire. That guy will be in the auction draft next year. Is basically what the case is, and I like that. I think it, I think that's a great move because being able to stash players and whoever can get them quick, who's up in the morning, you don't just get to keep those players next year. I think that's good that they get back in the auction draft. So I like
that is correct. And we are an anti-tanking league, which means that, Eric, you would not have the first pick in the reserve draft next year. It's actually the first player out of the money will have the first pick next year. So it looks like it would be Team T-Pain. If the league ended today, Tyler would have the first pick starting at 4th place. Then I would have the second pick. Pete would have the 3rd pick, and so on from there. So it's not just like you can trade all your players at the end of the year and just for draft picks towards the end of the year. You got to get young guys that are actually going to be keepers for the following year, maybe injured guys if you're looking like the season's not gone in your favor. So it's not as clear cut as you can just go into the tank at the end of the year.
And strategically, it is interesting too, though, because like in future years, if someone decides not to keep a high salary guy, and maybe there's not big names in the auction draft next year, but that's a lot of salary you freed up. Where maybe that player is only worth 20, but since you're the only team that really has buying power, you could spend 35 on the guy and basically guarantee him on your team. So again, it'll be interesting next year to see how teams manage their salaries heading into the draft and who's got what available coming in.
Yeah. I've gotten this question as well. Trades do not affect salaries. So you can trade a guy, you get the salary with the player, just like in MLB and every other sport. You don't get a new salary, you don't get a new contract when you get a trade. So it's just if you're trading for a B player, you're gonna have that player for one more year. Or if you choose to keep him the following year. That question's come up as well. What other frequently asked questions have you had, Eric?
Yeah, the third year, obviously the price goes up $5. We know that. Yeah, like you said, once you trade for a player, there's no reset on a contract. It's not like you get them for 3 years after that. If 3 years from now I trade Bryce Harper, he's going to be in the auction draft the next year regardless. The player I don't trade him to gets him for 3 years after that. So I think people obviously got to be wary of that moving forward. But no, I'm trying to think of anything else. But anything else that you got?
I think a lot of the questions were just now that we have our feet wet, now that we've drafted our teams, I feel like people kind of have a better feel for everything that's going on,
right,
how the draft works, who was eligible for the draft, who was not eligible for the draft. I know those were a lot of some big hitting questions,
yeah,
and how all that works. But yeah, I'm kind of drawing a blank on anything that's popped up. But if there's any questions you guys ask or have, just feel free to ask them in the chat at any time. All right, Eric, you got anything else before we jump into these draft analysis?
Let's do it. I'm ready to start grilling.
All right, so we are going to start at the top. I'm going to pull up the team rosters of each team. I have mine listed alphabetically. I hope you do as well. So we will start with 24, David, 21. As I list these names, I'm going to list the team name. I'm going to give you who the owner of that team is. And if we want to talk about what our relationships are to that player, who's kind of the guys, how we know them, what our relationships are, we can do that off the top. Our plan is we're going to talk about your strengths, or we're going to talk about your values. We're going to talk about your overpays. We're going to talk about your strengths, weaknesses, any notes we have. And at the end, we will give you our draft grade. All right.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So starting with 24, David 21, which sounds like more of the password for his computer and everything.
That's actually, speaking of the personal relationships, that's actually Paul George and LaDainian Tomlinson.
Paul George. What's the Paul George connection?
24. Didn't
he? Why is he like Paul George?
Pacers fan.
Oh, interesting.
David Long is a Pacers fan. As we know, he's a Chargers fan. So that is Paul George, David, LaDainian Tomlinson.
That's what we have. Justin Herbert sitting there in the top right corner.
Exactly. So this is just working out great. And he actually, again, getting to know Dave a little bit, just got a new helmet in. Paid a little bit of money, got a helmet in. Justin Herbert signed, inscription, all decked out. Looks pretty sweet.
Awesome. All right. So for David's team, I have his best value that he had. I didn't see a lot. It was pretty barren, but I have his best value I've seen so far is Craig Kimbrell for $3. What do you think?
Yeah, I tried to sneak Kimbrell in there for $1, but people like that first performance. I was like, dang it. I was really looking to get a closer. But he got him for $3. That wasn't too bad. I had a value. I don't know. There's a couple teams I have a couple names for, but I'll give one for right now. I think Jose Barrios. I mean, I know that's probably around where he was supposed to go, but 26 years old, I think a 17 salary for the next. And then I know I don't know if your grades are a little bit looking ahead or it's just strictly this year. But I really like the value of Jose Barrios at $17 for the next 2 years. I think every year he's put together really good seasons in the MLB, almost a 200 strikeout pitcher each year, already threw a gem in his first start. I think he leads a decent rotation for Dave there, or not a decent one, but a good top of the rotation for Dave.
Yeah, I mean, Jose Barrios for 17, it's good value, but I don't think it's great value. I mean, I feel like at this point we know what we're getting out of Jose Barrios. You're getting a 3.5 ERA. You're not going to get a ton of strikeouts, even though he had 12 strikeouts in his first start. You're not going to get like Cy Young caliber pitching out of Jose Barrios. It's just not who he is. So yeah, 17 is a good value, but I just think Jose Barrios is one of those guys, kind of like Kyle Hendricks, where he kind of is what he is at this point.
Yeah.
All right. What do you have as his biggest overpay?
I think Arenado was a huge overpay. At 31, I think that was damn near double what most of the fan graphs had him at going. I know he's a huge Arenado fan. It's going to be interesting how he is out of Colorado. I just think when you see what other players went for around that range, 31's a really, really steep price. And that's, I don't know. I'm not saying he's not going to be good, but that's just a steep price for me.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that was one of the biggest overpays of the draft. We'll get to some more later, but that was definitely an overpay. I think the move from Colorado to St. Louis, we've seen it done before with guys like Matt Holliday, and they were okay. But I think of the combination of the change in the ball this year and Coors Field doesn't just increase home runs. For those of you who don't know this, Coors Field is actually such a larger field because
Yeah.
of the elevation.
Doubles, triples.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, the batting averages actually are very much increased in Coors Field, not just the home runs. So we're going to see a pretty big dip in batting average, I think, this year. I think the RBIs and runs might still be there, but we're going to see a dip in home runs. We're going to see a dip in batting average. I don't know if he's going to justify that 31. Kyle Lewis is another. 19 for Kyle Lewis is a lot, where I don't really know what Kyle Lewis is at this point. I feel like he's just a guy that came up a year or two ago. He had like a good month or two, and he hasn't really done a whole lot outside of that. Not worth, certainly not worth $19. A 268 average, a sub 300 on base percentage in 2019. Last year, he played 58 games, a 262 average, 364 on base percentage is decent. 11
Good
home
enough for
runs.
rookie of the year, Kyle.
I
He
guess.
won a rookie of the year.
Who was he competing against? I mean, you could have given that rookie of the year to Brian Hayes for his efficiency and what he had in that 1 month.
And that's what I'm saying. And let's go off that too. I mean, could you not argue Brian Hayes is just as much of an overpay? I mean, I think right now looking at Fangraphs, they have 5 third basemen worth $20 or more,
Yeah.
and he's not the quality of those 5 third basemen yet. Again, 2-3 years down the road maybe, but I know a lot of people were big on the young players, and I was a big proponent of that. But I think some people overpaid on some of those young players in certain cases. Brian Hayes might be worth $20. I could be eating my words here in a bit, but already hurt. Buck's looking bad. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Now here's my first hot take of the pod so far. Strengths and weaknesses of Dave's team. Dave has the single most blah team I have ever seen in my life, and it is so unremarkable. I can't find a single strength in this team. I can't find a single weakness in this team. So I need to turn this over to you, because I don't even know where to go with this team. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It just, you need to give me some direction here.
I actually quite like the lineup. I think the lineup actually has some potential there. I think Anthony Rizzo, again, Arenado was an overpay, but Arenado, Dahl, Meadows, you're going to have a lot of guys hitting for high averages. We'll see what Brian Reynolds can do after that shaky start last year. Dominic Smith, I think at $8 is another great value. Look at the season Dominic Smith put together last year. And I know it was a 60-game stint or 50-game stint. If he can do that
every day last year, but he does not play every day. And we're seeing it right now.
right.
He's not even in the lineup today, and it's opening day for them.
I know. I'm just saying, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens. But I like the lineup. I don't think it's great. But it's not. Are we talking pitching yet, or are we just focusing on lineup?
Go for it. No, we can tackle it all together.
Pitching wise, I think it's a weak rotation. Like I said, I like Brios at the top. Blake Snell, obviously, that's a nice grab there. But other than that, Matthew Boyd is very, very shaky. He's going to get some strikeouts, but man, his ERA is going to be skyrocketing. I love me some Jake Arrieta at $4. I don't think you can go wrong there, but he's really outside of Snell, missing like a consistent rotation.
Snell doesn't need a lot of innings either.
No, he does not. And, you got Bumgarner, you got Marquez that can fill in those spots, but it's just a very average rotation. And I think maybe a little bit of an average lineup. I mean, I do think you're right that there's no great strength, but there's no great weakness.
Yeah, I mean, he's really relying on Jake Arrieta to be like a 3 in his rotation if he's going to go anywhere. I mean, his ERA, looking at some of these guys, Boyd, Gonzalez, Arrieta, I mean, he's going to have quite a high ERA. He doesn't have a lot of guys that eat a lot of innings, especially with Blake Snell. And then, I mean, you mentioned his lineup. He's got a good lineup. I'm not saying it's awful, but I mean, he's got a lot of guys in his lineup that just aren't going to hit 30 home runs. I mean, you got guys like Dominic Smith, Nick Solak, Brian Reynolds, David Dahl.
I mean, who's his biggest star? Arenado, and what did he pay for him? Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's your biggest bat in your lineup is Arenado, Robert, and Rizzo. And I would honestly argue even Robert I think is a little bit of an overpay at 28. I don't think
Yeah.
that's bad, but I think he's more of a 19-20 guy. 28's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these projections are pretty skewed. I don't see where some of these projections come from, some of these guys, and I guess we'll maybe touch on that a little bit later, but they're kind of off. I kind of have my own kind of ideas on
Yeah.
what these guys are going to do. But overall, one last thing. He has 3 Pirates on this team, which is 3 Pirates too many.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that little jab in there. But yeah, so it's a blah team. He's getting a blah grade. He's getting a straight C from me.
I gave him, which is interesting because I gave him a C minus, which sounds like maybe you're right. I sugarcoat things a little bit better, but I mean, I have him as an average team, C minus. But look, once we get into the divisions, like I said, a little bit more, I think this is a tougher division.
Yeah. All right, so we will move on to the next team, which is Angels in the Trout Field. That is Justin Finger. He goes by in the chat. He is Ryan J, but he goes by Justin. He is in law enforcement. He doesn't like having his name in on social media. So
He's got a cannon of an arm, though. He's
he
got a
does.
cannon.
He can hit a backstop from deep left center field with no problems at all.
I remember the first time I met him playing baseball. I just like that dude threw the ball laser center field to home. I'm like, wow, that kid can throw a baseball. That kid can throw.
So he went to high school with us. He moved out to Colorado after college. He's my best bro, my right hand man, and so that's where that. And then his brother-in-law will be David Luzak, which we'll
Great
talk
member
about.
to the football league as well that we added to.
Yeah, which we'll talk about in a bit. So that's Angels in the Trout Field. Let's talk about our first value of his. I think that Justin got the value of the draft in Shane Bieber at $40. I had my finger over that bid button to go 41 on Bieber, and I think I would have got him for 41. But I had already gotten DeGrom for 49, and I just didn't know if I could afford it at that point. And it's my biggest regret of the draft was not going 41 on Shane Bieber. How about you?
Again, there's some of these values that I have for the higher players, but I think he got some really good value with some of his lower guys. I mean, Mitch Haniger at $1. I know he didn't play last year, but this is a guy that when you really look back on some of his seasons, he's gonna like for $1. How can you complain about that? Another one too. I know I mentioned it in the draft yesterday in the draft room, but Dallas Keuchel at $6. That's a guy that he's not going to get you strikeouts, but if he can put together the seasons that he has in the past, that's a guy that will keep your ERA down. He's gonna throw some starts. You're hoping he can get some wins, quality starts. He doesn't have a high pitch count. No, he's not going to give you the Ks, but at $6, look at his ERA last year. How do you not like that value? So those are my two for him.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that can get you some ERA, but at this point in his career, he's not a big strikeout guy, and he hasn't been for a while. So I mean, even let's see, he had 42 strikeouts in 63 innings last year.
Right.
He's a strikeout liability.
He is.
So yeah, he had what do you have? 1.99 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP. So you forgive the strikeouts if he's going to have an ERA
exactly. But he's got to have an ERA like that. If his ERA is in the 3.5s, 4, I think you have to take him out of your rotation. And that's not a horrible ERA, but for fantasy purposes, you got to get someone in there that's at least getting strikeouts or something. Yeah.
The 2 years before that, it was 3.75 and 3.74. So
right.
I hope that he's closer to the 2020 pitcher than he was the 2019 pitcher. All right, biggest overpay. I got Randy Arozarena for 22. Randy Arozarena had a good month, but Randy Arozarena who is he? I mean, he is a no-name prospect. He wasn't really a top prospect. He came up. He had a great postseason, which is promising. That's versus the best pitchers in the league. But they're projecting him for 33 homers, 20 steals, and a 372 on base percentage. I'm sorry, that's not happening. Not from Randy Arozarena.
And that's the thing too is again, I'm a big prospect guy. He's still considered a rookie. He's still like the 40th best prospect, not the 5th, not the 6th, 40th. And I know like the Fangraphs have him, and I think the Fangraphs have him around the value that he actually got him at. But I'm with you. This is a 26-year-old randomly came up. If he's good, fine. It might work out for him. But wow, that's just a lot of money. That there's other guys that like Azuna at 24, I feel quite a bit more comfortable with than Arozarena at 22. It could work out. but I think that was his overpay. But I'll tell you what, I think Justin did a really, really good job in this draft of really paying market price. I think he did one of the better jobs of not really overpaying at anything or even a couple dollars here. He got Bregman right around where he should have. Wilson at 9. LeMahieu, I think with all the different positions he can play is huge. So
Yeah. So for strengths, Justin, I know last year he was very frustrated with his on-base percentage, how far he fell behind. He had
DJ
guys like
LeMahieu
Gary
helped.
Sanchez and Matt Olson and guys that just could not get on base. So he made a statement to go on base percentage this year, because when you're on base, you're going to score runs, you're going to steal bases, you're going to get RBIs. So it kind of ties into everything. And I think he did a great job of tackling that in the draft. Got a lot of high on base percentage guys. If Arozarena continues to do what he does, Swanson, Bregman, Ozuna, I think he's going to be top in the league in on base percentage. And he has the best closer duo in the league, and it's not
Yeah,
close, between Chapman
right.
and Liam Hendricks. If those guys stay healthy, he will lead the league in saves, and they will definitely help his ERA.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing for me is with the closer thing is I never like paying too much on a closer, and and Hendricks I think you could arguably say is the best closer in baseball. But even I was looking again at the Fangraphs things, and because saves is one category, they don't value closers like price wise as much. So I think
They do
17
help your ERA and WHIP, but
they will.
you're only getting the ERA and WHIP over a period of 60 innings. So it's
Right.
not like the ERA and WHIP you're getting out of 200 innings from a good ERA and WHIP. It's only a third of that because you're only getting 60 innings of it.
Exactly. So to put $30 into two close, and again, you're right. That could be trade bait. I'm not saying it's a bad move by any means, but those two are really going to help that one category. And that's kind of what. And the Chapman, obviously the K's. He's still gonna have a lot of K's and stuff, so you can't go wrong there. But no, yeah, you 100% right. His closers are a tandem.
All right, for his weaknesses, I got, who is his starting pitcher to? He's got Bieber, and that's a great place to start. But who's his SP2? He's got Keuchel, he's got Dustin May, he's got Ryu, Julio Teheran. And I'm looking at these guys going, okay, they're okay. I mean, if Keuchel is what he was last year, he'll be good. Is Ryu, is he legit? Is this what he is now? Is he like an ace caliber pitcher? I don't know. I would lean yes, but I'm not going there. And Dustin May, is he going to keep a rotation spot throughout the year, or there's a lot of guys that are nipping at the bud to get at that job? Tony Gonsolin going out with injury helps, but David Price also wants to be in the rotation as well. And they got plenty of guys that can throw innings.
Yeah, I have exactly the same point as you. I think his rotation's where it's at, and we talked about the strikeouts with Keuchel. Not only is that an issue, but really, if you look at the projections, almost none of his starters project for 9Ks per 9 innings.
Yeah.
Ryu barely makes it. Bieber's obviously going to be the big one, and he's going to need those 266 projected strikeouts
You're going to
because
need 300 from him.
yeah, because May and Keuchel, and again, if you're going to start two closers, if you're going to go that direction, that's going to be less strikeouts than having another starter in there. So I think strikeout wise is going to be where Justin's going to slack in the league right now.
You know
He's
what?
going to need a lot from Bieber.
Though, I think two closers is the standard, and his closers will help him bridge the gap in strikeouts.
Yes, because they are big. They are big strikeout guys.
So maybe it does even out. Maybe drafting Hendricks and Chapman make up for what he's losing in Ryu and Keuchel, and maybe that's how it kind of all evens out. So I think he'll be maybe middle of the pack in pitching, but it'll all depend on how the rest of his rotation looks. All right, so my overall notes on what I have for Justin. All right, Justin, I'm looking in the camera right now. Justin, stop drafting catchers. Just stop. You have 3 catchers on your roster, and you're playing one of them. Yes, Travis d'Arnaud is a good catcher, but he's $7 that you could have used elsewhere on a much better player who plays every day, not every other day. And Travis d'Arnaud's best season, he had like 19 home runs, but he only had like 60 RBIs because catchers don't play every day. So they don't count towards your counting stats as much. Stop putting catchers in your utility. You only need one. And not only are you starting 2 catchers, but you also drafted a 3rd catcher in the reserve draft. So Sam Huff, yeah, like he's a prospect, but you got him for $3. You took him in the 3rd to last round. By the time he actually gets caught up and does anything in the league, you're going to pay $8 for a catcher. He would have to come up and be an elite catcher for that money. And when there's dollar catchers that go off the board every year, it's just not worth the money. I don't get it.
I agree. The catcher is the quarterback of fantasy baseball because I think the fact that you can get the top catcher outside of Real Muto, like a Contreras for $9, I mean, again, if you have multiple catchers in your lineup that are playing 125, 130 games compared to 150, that's a lot of at bats you're missing out on. 100%.
Absolutely.
Are we doing grades?
But I got a little bit more to say.
Oh no, for sure.
Last he's got a good offense, but it's not great. His pitching is lackluster. He's got Shane Bieber, but again, I just leaves a little bit to be desired. I think it's so hard to trade for pitching in this league, where if those guys don't turn out to be high level pitching, it's hard to find guys like that. So it's all gonna depend on what his rotation does. Go ahead and give me your grade.
I gave Justin a C minus. I like his team, but here's the thing, and I don't think he overpaid on anything. I don't think he necessarily did anything wrong outside of the couple things we mentioned. My thing is, I still think he's missing one star bat, especially with the Randy Arozarena thing. I think he's missing one more, just like 30, 20, even 25, $30 bat that really could have fit in his lineup, because I'm curious how the Darnos, the Seagers, the Hicks, as much as I like the Hanigers, the Swansons and stuff like that, he might be missing one more bat in that lineup that can get him going. And then obviously the pitching concern. So I'm going to give him a C minus.
I gave him the same grade. I got a C minus for him.
Nice. There we go.
All right, let's move on to the battling swashbucklers. That is going to be Jay. And who is Jay, Eric?
Jay is Dave's buddy that he actually works with, David Long, the team that we talked about already. He's his work buddy, and they know each other. I think they've known each other for quite a while. They both live out in Pennsylvania, so I think they're pretty good buddies as far as I know. And he's obviously in the football league as well, so we know him quite a bit. And we'll see what he can do.
All right, what do you have for his biggest draft value?
Let me roll down here for Jay. I have his biggest value as, I'll be honest. I know this is me prospect talking, but I think Casey Mize. I think Casey Mize is a guy that's going to start 30 games this year. This is a guy that is going to be absolutely worth it at $10, $15 for the next 3 years. I know me and you think very, very differently at that. But that's where I have a few more, but I don't want to steal any thunder because I do think he had some good values in this draft, but I'll let you say yours.
I have Casey Mize as his biggest overspend.
Do you? Okay, interesting.
Casey Mize for 10. He might work out. He's a former top prospect. Last year he came up and he had a 6.99 ERA and a 1.4.
He's still a top prospect. Yeah, I mean he's still considered a rookie.
But he hasn't proved anything. He hasn't done anything to prove that he can pitch on this level. Yeah, he tore up the minor leagues, but it's different when you get to the show. So yes, he could be good. He could be one of the best values going into next year. But they have so much pitching prospects between Matt Manning and Tariq Skubal. There was even questions on whether or not he would make the rotation this year, Casey Mize. And so I think when Matt Manning, when it's his turn to come up and start pitching in the rotation, I think Mize might be one of the ones that could get dropped off depending on how he's pitching. If he carries another 6.9 ERA into 2021, then he might be on the chopping block and might lose his rotation spot.
It's very possible, yeah.
I had his biggest value as Anthony Rendon for 22. I mean, that seems like an early second round value. If we were to do Snake for $22, that seems like good. You're going to get 4 categories out of him. Great on base percentage, home runs, RBIs, runs, in a very good lineup with the Angels. So I really like that value that he got with Anthony Rendon. I wish I could have got in on that because I would have much preferred Anthony Rendon for 22 over my Gio Urshela, who's my starting third baseman right now. And I had plenty of money left over for him.
Yeah, and I would say that as well. My other one, like I said, didn't want to steal your thunder. Anthony Rendon, he got him right at about market value, and that was surprising because I think Anthony Rendon. When I saw him go for 22, I was like, wow, that's kind of around where I had him, but I'm surprised his didn't get jumped up to 27, 28, 29. I mean, again, Randy Arozarena went for that price, and you could have had Anthony Rendon, like that. He's a stud.
Arozarena's ceiling is Anthony Rendon, and there's no whether or not he's going to actually get there. Rendon's just been quietly doing it for like 5 straight years now.
Exactly, 100%.
And then I had his other overspend, Whit Merrifield, for 27. I just think it's a little bit of an overspend. I think it's more closer to 20 than 27, but go on.
No, and that's funny because I was going to say the same thing, and we look a little foolish saying that through the first 16 at-bats of 2021 because the dude's hitting 500 with 3 home runs and 8 RBIs. But no, I agreed. I thought 27 was a little much. I don't even mind the Freeman for 40 because Freeman, I think you could argue, is easily the best first baseman in baseball, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. So I like that. But yeah, Whit Merrifield was a little high, but right now he's killing it.
So we have yet to talk about his pitching, but I think we're going to be on the same page here when we say that he has one of the top pitching rotations in the league.
Yeah.
He has Luis Castillo, Garrett Cole, FC at the top. You really like Casey Mize. I like Chris Paddock a lot.
Love Case Chris Paddock.
Yeah, he didn't prove it in his first start, and he's got some question marks going into this year. But I mean, between those four guys, those are some pretty high caliber arms. Jordan Hicks is a good reliever, but Jordan Hicks actually isn't the closer for St. Louis. It's actually Reyes. So he's got a question mark there, but he has the pitching depth. He's got Jensen. Tyone, I don't know how many innings he's going to throw this year, but he's got plenty of arms. Richard Rodriguez, Michael Pineda, if Mackenzie Gore gets called up, and Domingo Herman. He's got plenty of guys to mix and match here, and he's going to have some trade bait in a month or two. If Mackenzie Gore gets called up and Domingo Herman is pitching well, he's definitely going to have some trade bait. He can go and get a top tier closer. He can go get some pitching. He can go get some stolen bases if he needs it or some more power. So I really like the position that he's in this year, and I really like what he did with his draft.
I do too. I think Jay's actually got one of the better teams in the league. I think, as you mentioned, his rotation's one of the best. Really big Castillo fan. I think Garrett Cole at 44 is still a bargain. I mean, he might be one of the only pitchers this year that you can guarantee you might get you 200 innings and the 250, 300 strikeouts. Because with the innings counts this year, I think Garrett Cole at 44 is a huge value. Chris Paddock, like you said, big fan of him as well. I think he's, like I said, one of the better rotations for sure. Kenley Jansen, he's going to get the saves. I like it. I think he's got one of the better teams. He's got one of the more balanced lineups in the entire league. I really like what Jay did.
Yeah. Garrett Cole, I just don't like the guy. I don't really like his attitude. I think maybe the ban on substances or the crackdown on substances might hurt him this year. And he pitches in a very hitter-friendly ballpark in Yankee Stadium. So I just think like for the top tippity top tier pitchers, that's just a few too many question marks for me to want to spend that money. Where I went and got DeGrom, who I feel like there is no question marks for.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, but.
And real quick, like not to get too off topic here, but like what strategy is there to, is it better to get those big hitters for 45 in a keeper league where you can keep a guy for 3 years, or do you get that 31, 32-year-old pitcher that you got to prospect out for 3 years? It's a hell of a lot easier getting that 24-year-old Acuna for 50 than a 33-year-old, Max Scherzer, something like that. I mean, that you got to think of that. It's tough.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of baseball. And it's the beauty of fantasy baseball and why I love it so much. Fantasy football is so cut and dry where it's you either have good players or you don't. It's fantasy points. And it's at the end of the day, you either scored the most fantasy points or you didn't. Your team is good or it isn't. Where fantasy baseball, there's so many different ways for you to have a good team where you can have 3 completely different teams that all bring different things to the table that all perform well. And then they'll have to duke it out at the end. But
sure.
In fantasy football, it's just a matter of getting the best guy, and that's kind of the end of the day. Do you have the best guys, or you don't have the best guys? And That's what I love about baseball and fantasy baseball.
100% agreed.
All right, question marks about Jay's team though. He's got no second closer because Jordan Hicks, I don't think he might get a few saves for St. Louis. He might be next in line, but he's got no second closer depending on what Richard Rodriguez is doing in Pittsburgh. Taylor Rogers, he's on a timeshare with Minnesota. He might get 1 save per week with Colome. So I don't know what's kind of going on there. I mean, so he has some potential guys for saves, but none of them are going to get more than 2-3 saves a week. So he's got some question marks there. He's got some great high-end pitching, and he's got pitching depth, but there is some room for improvement in his lineup. And there's one other thing that I'm going to say about Jay's team. I would love to give Jay's team an A, but Jay's $1 players suck. Jay did a horrible job at the end of the draft. And I'm sorry, Jay, but like, if you look at some of what the other teams did and some of the other $1 players that went off the board towards the end of the draft, when you got guys like Grichuk and Riley and McCutchen and Polanco and Jayden Davis, like which one of those guys are contributing in more than like 2 categories? JD Davis is in a timeshare. I don't even know if he's going to play every day. I like JD Davis, but I don't know if he's playing every day. Polanco is a 1 category contributor, and he's a batting average contributor, and it's an on-base percentage league. And, McCutchen's going to score you runs, maybe hit you 20 home runs if he's healthy. Grichuk, who knows what we're getting there? I don't think he's hitting 30 home runs like they're projecting him for. And Austin Riley, he might hit 30 home runs, but he's probably going to hit you 220 while he's doing it. So I just think that his $1 players you get at the end of the draft, there's a lot of teams that did a lot better with the values they got late. So he's not going to be getting an A from me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think he's got the big bats in there: Freeman, Merrifield, Rendon, and Turner. And I think you can argue. I know he brings us. I know he brings the stolen bases, but I think you can argue Trey Turner's a little bit of an overpay with how many good, and I know you might disagree with this because you're a big stolen base guy, but with how many good shortstops there are in baseball, do you really want to spend 41 on just maybe the fifth or sixth best one? And I understand that in fantasy terms, those stolen bases are going to be huge, but I don't know. To me, you could argue that that was a little bit of an overpay, and I rather would have him gotten a Bellinger at 41.
He's actually not even hitting leadoff, so his stolen bases are going to be a question. He's hitting third for Washington, so I would expect his stolen bases to go down this year. So I think 37 is a reasonable projection for him, but he's not going to steal 50 like you may have drafted him for the last few years. So I would probably pay 41 for him if he's going to hit third and he's going to hit 30 home runs. But he's also a major health concern. He's never played a full season, so you'd have to promise me that he's going to play 150 games for me to want to spend 41 on him as well. And is that something there that could be definitely come to haunt him?
And real quick, is that not one of the reasons paying a guy that I don't want to say just gets stolen bases, but their main thing that you're adding to your team is stolen bases? That's why a lot of teams don't steal anymore, because that is injuries. That's why he's hurt a lot,
Look at the typical injury. Look at the typical stolen base experts of the last 20 years. Jose Reyes, Hanley Ramirez. Those guys don't typically stay healthy because of their muscles are all tightened up and they're easy to tear a hamstring. And if they tear a hamstring or they pull a muscle, they're useless without their speed. And so, speed guys, Grady, we talked about Grady Sizemore, I think, on draft night, and some of those guys like that. So typically the high speed guys can never stay healthy. Overall, my grade for Jay, I did end up giving him a B+ still. I did like a lot of his values that he has. I like his team as a whole. I like how it came together. He left a lot to be desired towards the end of the draft, but I think he's going to be able to make some moves throughout the year to kind of shore up some of those weaker positions.
I agree. I gave Jay an A-. I think, and here's the thing. I noticed that for a lot of teams were not prioritizing pitching. So I think the teams that did are really going to find themselves beneficiaries during the trade deadline, because I think they're going to have a lot to give, because I think a lot of teams went all in on lineups and not as many teams went on pitching. And I think his depth and his rotation and everything, that's going to go a long way, especially with his star power in the lineup. So I gave him an A-.
Absolutely. So our newcomer to the league, the Beantown Boys, brought to us by LA, actually. He's back in Maine for the weekend. But Bryce, the newcomer to the league, is Chad's buddy, resident Red Sox fan. And resident of Los Angeles. So he is going to be our newest member of the league. I have his best draft value as Ketel Marte for $18. What do you think?
Yeah, I wish I had more money at that point, because that was at a point where I'm just sitting there and I'm like, wow, I really wish I could drive that price up, because I know last year he kind of fell off a little bit in terms of what he could do. But again, I don't know how much people are putting stock into those seasons, because man, getting Marte based on what he could do at that price is quite crazy. But honestly, go ahead.
He could very well be the number one second baseman in the league.
100%. And the fact, and again, I don't know how much people are thinking of the multiple positions thing's huge. You start having injuries, and I'll say this as well. There's some teams I think that drafted too many prospects that aren't in the big leagues yet, because they're gonna have to make decisions. And if you don't have that depth on your bench,
you don't have the bench spots.
Right, you don't have the bench spots. And I know I was a big prospect guy, but even I noticed some teams are taking too many of them. So the fact that guys can play multiple positions is huge. Ketel Marte, second base, outfield, put him where you want. Huge stuff there. I had his biggest value. I know we wanted to do players, but I'll be honest. I know there's not big star power there, and we'll get to it. But man, he has a really cheap but promising rotation. I will say that.
Yeah.
I like Luzardo. I like Plesac. I like Jose Urquidy. I like Alex Cobb. We'll see there. I'm not saying it's a great rotation, but he was really able to kind of moneyball it and throw together something decent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I had as his best value. It was just his rotation in general.
All right. Yeah. He's definitely got some promise in his rotation, but we'll get to that in a sec. For his overpays, I have Kyle Tucker at 27 seems like a bit of an overpay. I get that the ceiling is there. I get the prospect pedigree is there. I think it's just a little bit much, especially for a guy that just the on-base percentage is just not good. He's kind of a liability there. Look at his on-base percentage last couple of years, 325 last year, .319 the year before, where it's like, oh, he's kind of actually hurting you in on-base percentage, which you wouldn't expect from a guy who, I guess small sample size you could chalk it up to, but a guy who has come up and supposedly played really well. Well, the on-base percentage isn't really reflected in that. I also have Keston Hiura for 19 as an overpay, and I know Dylan Carlson for 16 is an overpay, but I drove up the price on him at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Tucker is one that stands out. Again, let's just look at the lineup real quick and say Xander went for 25, and then you paid 27 for Kyle Tucker. So you must have a lot of promise in him. And I know the Fangraphs had him around the 20 range, but kind of like you, I kind of want to see that first. I want to see that value because he played quite a bit last year, over 200 at bats. And what really did he bring to the fantasy circle? I mean, a lot of ribbies. I will say that he was in a good spot in the order last year. 42 RBIs in 58 games. That's a lot. But we'll see what he brings other than that. My biggest overpay, honestly, and it's not by much because I don't think he really overpaid for many guys, but I would argue Ozzy Albies was a little bit of an overpay. Again, not by a whole lot, but there's not a lot of great second basemen, so I can understand why he did that. I just feel like it's one of those positions in fantasy that unless you're getting the Altuve, the LeMahieu, or the Ketel Marte, I don't really think you need to spend super big on second base. But I could see where that works out.
My
But I
second
think it was
baseman is $1.
yeah, I think it was a little bit of an overpay on Ozzy Elvis, and I like him a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, 27 seems like a lot for Albies. I'd like it a lot more if he was closer to 20. All right, what do you got for his biggest strengths and weaknesses?
I think he's got good young star power in the lineups. Again, I don't know how much stock you put into future years or if you're more looking at it just this year. But I mean, again, I'll say it: Albies, Ramirez, Bogarts, Marte for the next 3 years. He's probably keeping all of those guys, I would imagine. Just really good stuff. I think that those are guys that are going to be in the thick of things. Those are going to be his core guys. It gives him that nice young lineup. Like I said, I like the value in the rotation. I kind of get the vibe that you might rip it apart. It's not strong. It's not strong, but I think again with what he was able to do with his money, I think Plesac at 13 is pretty decent. I think Luzardo at 16, Urquidy was a guy I was looking at as well that I kind of wanted to get on my team, but I just wasn't able to get him. He pitched really well last year. Not a big strikeout guy though, but good value in the rotation. But it's not. I don't know if it's a good one, but it's good value.
Yeah, man, I can't find a strength in this team. I guess his strength would be speed. He's got plenty of that with Ramirez and Kyle Tucker and Hira maybe, but it's not even Albies, but it's not really elite speed. I mean, he might come like top 4 in speed, but I don't think he's even going to come in first in speed. So I guess that's his one kind of strength. He doesn't really have a lot of power. If I look at his lineup, I mean, he's got guys like Brandon Belt and Profar and O'Neill. Like, I don't want those guys anywhere near my team. I don't know about you guys, but it's just like these guys just don't really leave a good taste in my mouth. So I don't really know what he's getting there. Maybe if Julio Rodriguez gets the call up or Abrams or, if Carlson continues to play well, maybe he takes some of those spots, but leaves a lot to be desired in the lineup. And yeah, his pitching staff gets an F. I'm sorry. His pitching staff is awful. It is terrible. You don't have a single like top 50 pitcher on your. Plesac was good for like 8 games. You don't know what you're getting out of Plesac, and you spent $13 for him, which is fine, but I just don't really like the guy. Luzardo, same thing. Okay, he might be okay. So Luzardo is your ace? Yeah, I don't think so. Alex Cobb playing for the Angels. I don't know what you're getting there. Has he ever had a sub-4 ERA? Let's take a look. He had 4.5 last year, 4.3 the year before, 10.5 the year before that, 4.9 the year before that. Cobb sucks. He's a scrub. He's a bona fide scrub. And Urquidy, I don't know what you're getting out of Urquidy, but like he's the starting pitcher 5 for Houston. Who knows if he even keeps the spot throughout the year? And his closers, Matt Barnes, I guess he's going to have the job in Boston, but he isn't that great either. He's had a projected for 4 ERA, and Drew Pomeranz isn't the closer in San Diego. It's a timeshare between him, Melanson, and Pagan, I believe. And I think they're leaning towards Pagan, getting a lot of the save opportunities. And he doesn't. Dane Dunning, he's like splitting time in the rotation. He doesn't have a guaranteed rotation spot. Davey Garcia is not on the team, and Chris Martin isn't the closer in Atlanta. So what the heck does he have on this pitching rotation? His rotation sucks. He gets an F, and he gets an F for his draft grade as well, because he failed in getting any type of pitcher that can contribute to his pitching rotation. Starter, reliever, doesn't matter. His pitching sucks. And his lineup is okay, but it has way too many holes. Sorry, Bryce. I'm not taking it easy on you. I know you're new to the league, which is why I got to be so hard on you, but do better.
All right, I'm gonna give the new guy a little bit more credit because Carrasco and Gallen won't be out too long. And Carrasco, I know he's been hurt a lot and he's a very big injury concern, but that's a guy that came back last year and pitched really, really well. A 2.91 ERA. Gallen comes back real soon, and you could argue he might be the best pitcher on his staff. Again, he's never had a whole lot of innings before. But if those guys can come back healthy, and then Luzardo and Plesac turn into your 3-4 with your Urquidy kind of as your 5 or whatever the case may be. I know the bullpen's a concern, but I don't hate the rotation as much as you do, especially with, again, how much he was able to really pay for it. He didn't have to spend a lot. Like I said, I like the lineup. I think there's definitely a few holes there. Marte, Bogarts, Ramirez, and Albies, though, that's going to carry a lot of categories. I actually have the new guy Bryce with a C+.
All right. A little difference of opinion there. Sorry, Bryce, not taking it easy on you. All right. So we move on to Burns when I PV, which is your commissioner, yours truly. Eric, I'm going to kind of let you lead the way here. I'm going to kind of let you spearhead what's going on with my team. I'll give a little outline of kind of how my draft went, how I thought, and then I want you to kind of put me on roast, put me in my place.
Sure.
And I'll rebuttal as best as I can.
Okay.
I started off the draft. I got like 3 of the first like 15 players. I had spent all my money. I didn't have any money to spend like throughout the mid of the draft. I went like 100 picks where I didn't take anybody. You know, I got Acuna, I got DeGrom, and then I got each for 49, then Seager for 31. And I was like, okay, I knew I got to cool it. And then towards the end, I could not believe the values that were going off the board. And I ended up leaving close to $30 on the table, which makes me absolutely cringe, because leaving $30 on the table means that instead of getting a $7 Guzman, I could have got a $40 or $41 Shane Bieber. So, you know, that really hurts. My team would look a lot different if I had Bieber as my 2, DeGrom and Bieber 1-2 than it does now. So draft, it didn't go as planned, but I'll let you kind of tear it apart now.
When I initially looked at your team, here's what I there was part of me that wanted to do a similar strategy of going like a few big guys, and you did that with Acuna and Seager. Here's the thing. We talked about this before with the injuries. Seager's an injury concern. Acuna is looking to try to go 50-50. I think Acuna is worth $50 by all means. Was that not the highest in the draft? Was that the highest player?
I don't think anyone went for more than 50.
Right. I'll tell you this. Your lineup is going to obviously be carried by Seager and Acuna. I think you have 2 MVP candidates in there. I think Seager could be one. Acuna, without a doubt, is one. Any of that, and Conforto's kind of an injury concern too as well. You have injury concerns, and if one of your stars goes down, I will say I think your lineup is in big trouble. I like Josh Bell. I like the value you got there at $11, but for 2 guys that like running around, for 3 guys that get hurt often, I shouldn't say get hurt often. Acuna's really not had big injury concerns, but I wonder if one of your stars goes down, your lineup might be in big trouble. The other thing is I don't know if you want me to break down everything. You want me to break your rotation? Your rotation, I like. Obviously, you got DeGrom at 49, and I think some sites had him worth as much as 60. So I do think you got a great value there. I mean, could be the best pitcher in baseball again this year, nothing stopping him. And who's to say he won't do that for the next 3 years? He's only 32, so I don't mind that. But again, past that, you definitely got a lot of value. When we talk about some of your guys that you picked up on injury, that you were waiting for, I actually was really surprised you weren't going to go in on Eloy as well, because I think that would have been interesting. You could have you had all the money to basically say, I'm going to have Eloy on my team. And I was actually surprised when he was nominated, you didn't do that, because of all the injury slots you have. But I understand you probably didn't want to have too many guys there. But I do say any injuries, big trouble, but I do like the rotation. DeGrom's going to carry it. I'm a huge Sandy Alcantara fan. I think he's going to be a stud this year. Christian Javier, I think, could be an absolute stud this year. But again, there's still some question marks on that. They could be. Yeah. We haven't seen that yet. I like Neris, Pagan, obviously, you're going to get the saves. But again, I think it could be a really good team, or if Acuna goes down for the season, your team's done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it is. If Seager goes down for the season, now you're in crisis mode. So that's kind of my take on your team.
Yeah, my plan was definitely to get Acuna and Buxton because I knew between those two I wouldn't have to draft a single stolen base the rest of the draft. And that's basically what I did until I got to the end where I just knew that I had to take with the money I had to take the best guy available, which happened to be Victor Robles. So Victor Robles will be on the block. I don't think I necessarily need a stolen bases. Brian Buxton's going to steal more than 13 bases. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me unless he only plays 50 games, knock on wood, but he's going to steal more than 13 bases. And if Victor Robles hits leadoff for Washington, I think he's going to be close to a 50 stolen base guy, which could be huge for a team. Wong might steal a few stolen bases if he ever cracks my lineup as well. What do you have for my biggest values and biggest overpays?
And real quick, just to add on the injury thing, Buxton's only played 100 games in his career once, one time. So, but I will say this: speaking of all the prospect stuff, Kalenick's a stud, and Kalenick will help your team this year. And I think again, $8 over the next few years, that's going to be a huge bargain. And he's definitely going to be one of the guys that you have on your team moving forward because he's going to help out a lot. For you on your biggest, you said weaknesses to start.
Let's do values and overpays.
Oh, sorry, value. Syndergaard. I mean, come on. I know he's not going to pitch this year, but or is he? Is he coming back at any time this year?
He should be back in about 2 months.
2 months. Okay, $9. I mean, I think that was probably one of those like I'm going to keep him down. Yeah, I'm going to keep him down. I'm not going to nominate him for all. Let people drain their money. Here I go. I get him for $9. I was mad I didn't have more money because, as you said multiple times through the draft, I wanted to enforce that price. You getting Syndergaard at $9 is absolutely insane. And I'll say this: as much as I said Acuna could get hurt, I think Acuna is by far and away, if he plays 160 games, that 50-50 thing is a true, real possibility. That 40-40 thing is a real, true possibility. And I know it sounds silly to say your value is the guy you paid the most for and the guy that was paid the most for, but it's Ronald Acuna Jr. and he's a mammoth. He's a stud. He's just a stud.
Yeah, I hope he is. My biggest values, I think for Frambil Valdez, for $1, I think he might be a 3-year keeper. As soon as he comes back from injury, I think he's going to avoid surgery and should be back in about a month or so. He's going to definitely have a spot in my rotation if we get there. And then Conforto for 19. I was just price enforcing Conforto. I had him for a $28 value as kind of like a mid-third round pick. I didn't really want Conforto. I didn't go into this draft thinking I was going to get Conforto, but for 19, I'll take it. If he hits as we projected for 27 home runs, a good on base percentage, he should get plenty of RBIs, plenty of runs in that Mets lineup. And then Luke Voit for 3. He's going to miss like a month. And then once he comes back, he was the league leader in homers last year. Like, I feel like once he comes back, he's more like a $20 player. What do you think?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And Luke Voit has really kind of established himself in that lineup. And even if and that wasn't just a small sample size either, because if you go back to 2019, those are darn good fantasy numbers as well. Not huge power from 2019, but it clearly showed in 2020. He's got the power. Over 162 games, he was on pace for over 60 home runs.
Yeah.
So again, you said at $3, Luke Voit, that's really nice, especially if one of your guys goes down with injury, you're going to need it.
So you said weaknesses. It would be a health concern. What else you got for strengths, weaknesses?
Like I said, I think depth might be an issue as well. I know you're usually pretty good on the waiver wire. That's one of your strengths, I think, as a fantasy player, is you seem to pick up the waiver wire really good and get the replacements when you need to. So I don't know if that's necessarily a weakness, but like I said, with the injury concerns, I also don't think you necessarily have the depth, especially with the hitters. I noticed you focused a lot more on the pitching depth more than anything. But I like the lineup, like I said, but it's really going to get carried by a few guys. And I think Josh Bell needs to have a really good bounce back year for Washington. I've always been a fan of his, so I think he will. Justin Upton, is he really, still like a really valuable player? We'll find out. I think there's concern. I think, like you said, concerns injury wise, but other than that, I think you have a pretty solid team.
Thank you. Yeah, I like some of the values that I got. I think some of my strengths is going to be my pitching depth. I think I'm going to be open for business at the deadline to get rid of some of that pitching depth that I have. I did take just like arms towards the end, guys that have high ceilings that I think can, get me some innings. I don't have great like second tier pitching. I mean, I really need Alcantara to pitch well, and I need Syndergaard and Valdez to come back if I want to compete and have a good pitching staff. But I think my pitching is going to be a little bit of a weakness, and I think on base percentage as well. I don't have a lot of good on base percentage guys. I did think personally, I did a good job of just getting my guys, the guys that I like with my money. I didn't overpay a whole lot for anyone, but I did leaving that money on the table just haunts me at night.
In fact, that was what my note was for overpay. I actually put none. If anything, you didn't like spend enough because you did end up with those dollars on the table. So I actually put on the notes overpay none because I can't look at a player and say, wow, like huge overpay, because I think you stayed within the bounds of what you were comfortable with paying, and I think you did a good job of that.
The only one I would have said was Josh Bell, and you called him a value.
I think he is. I think at 11 hitting that lineup, I think getting out of Pittsburgh, I've always been a fan of Josh Bell. I know last year, again, how much stock were we putting into that? Because in 2019, I mean, look at those numbers real quick. And he's always been a good on base percentage guy. So I think last year was kind of an outlier. I think Josh Bell he's going to be a really good player this year.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to Chad. Tell me a little bit about Chad.
Chad is my buddy. I've known him probably for 15 years now. Met on a Call of Duty game. And we've been buddies ever since. He's originally from Illinois, from Freeport, Illinois, and then he moved out to LA, and he's doing all that fancy stuff. So Cubs fan, like I said, kind of a weird Brewers fan. Still not sure what kind of brain wiring is going on there. Rams fan as well, since he actually was not because he moved to LA as a Rams fan. He was actually a fan when they were in St. Louis. Coincidence, they moved to LA and he's out there. But yeah, Chad's a good guy, fun dude, and he always gets me laughing. So,
and thank you for bringing Bryce into the league.
Yes.
Before we move on to that, what was your draft grade for me?
Oh, B-. I had you at a B-.
Sorry, I gave myself a B.
Yeah.
All right. So Chad, for Chad's biggest value, I think what I'm looking at here is Nelson Cruz for 11, and I think I'm going to come back and talk about that a few times. We talk about the kind of setting the precedent on what some of these guys go for. Get Nelson Cruz for 11 when there's guys that are much worse than Nelson Cruz that went for 17, 18, 19, 21 dollars.
Insane.
That's going to turn into be a really good value, and it's looking like Zach Eflin had a really good start. To get him for $1 could be huge.
Yeah. My value for him, again, I couldn't really stick to just one player because when we get to the overpays, I think he hurt himself a little bit. But it's interesting because I think his best value is that Stanton, Cruz, Reyes kind of line in his lineup. That is $39 for those three players, an average of $13 a player. And I mean, how many home runs is that trio going to get for him? I mean, that you're looking at 120 possibly on best years. If Stanton stays healthy, you could look at 140, 130 home runs from those three, and that's a combined $39. So when you pay 29 for Abreu, that's just kind of, and I know he's MVP, so we'll get into that, but I think the value of those three home run hitters right at the bottom there is insane. $39 for about 140 home runs.
Yeah. So what do you kind of alluded to it. So what are his biggest overpays?
Man, I know he won MVP. I'm going to say Jose Abreu. I think there's a lot of good first basemen in baseball. He's getting a little bit older. That's not saying he won't do good this year. That's not saying he might not put together an MVP season. And if that's the case, worth it. But I think Fangraphs had him as about the 8th or 9th most valuable guy. And I think they had him around $17. There's just so many good first basemen in baseball. It's, again, kind of like the quarterback thing. And I know I drafted Bellinger, but that was for a couple different reasons with him being able to play outfield. But I don't know. I think 29 was a lot for him. And I'll also say this. I don't want to. I'll let you go because I got a few for Chad. So I don't want to steal thunder. I got a few.
Only one I had was Blackman for 27. I just think getting up there in age, that lineup is going to be a lot worse than it has been in years past. And I just don't. I think he's going to start to tail off here towards the end of his career. Would not have paid 27 for that.
Yeah. Real quick, I also think we'll get into the rotation a little bit. I don't think these are massive overpays, but in terms of me liking these guys, I still think Giolito and Nola at those prices. And again, he's going to have one of the best pitching staffs because of it. But those seemed a little bit higher than I would have liked still. I think he could have saved a little bit of money there and went somewhere else in his lineup, but
yeah. For his strengths, I have his power. You alluded to it. Oh my God. Between Jose Abreu, Chris Bryant, Paul DeJong, Blackman, Gallo, Stanton, Cruz, Reyes, he is going to be the clear-cut leader in this league in home run. And I don't think it's going to be particularly close. He has more home run hitting and more RBIs than anyone else.
If you sort by projections, he doesn't have a guy in his lineup right now projected for less than 20 home runs.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, we got Solano in there now, and
is there? Okay.
So
Yeah, see on mine it doesn't show. My bad, it doesn't show that. Yeah, so just those. Yeah, I see that now on the bottom. Yeah, so just those two guys, but that is pretty insane.
Yeah, and he's also got Jack Peterson on his bench, so he could also
Yes.
put them if he wants even more power. I think his biggest weakness is going to be stolen bases. He hardly has any, but it is also going to be his health. I mean, you alluded to Stanton, Reyes, and Nelson Cruz, but he a lot of these power hitters that he drafted aren't necessarily healthy guys that missed a lot of games. Joey Gallo typically gets hurt. Stanton is always hurt. Cruz is getting old. He's usually healthy, but he's getting old. Blackman is usually hurt. Chris Bryant's battled some injuries. So I think he does have a little bit of an injury risk with this team. And I'll let you go. And then there's one other thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to obviously hit a lot of home runs, and I think he maybe almost focused a little too much on that because, like you said, I think he might run away with that category if everything goes according to plan. I think he's got a good rotation. I do think it's good. I think it's a little expensive, but again, not many teams focused on rotation, so it's going to come out looking at as one of the best rotations I think in the league. I think another concern could be on base percentage. I know he's got Cruz, Blackman, Bryant, but after that, you got a lot of power hitters. Gallo's not known for being an on base guy. He hits 215. Giancarlo Stanton, not really known for being a big on base guy. Paul DeYoung, again, not known for being a big on base guy. So he's got a lot of power, but I think if he sits too long on his team and doesn't make moves, he's got stock to make moves. His stock's high.
Yeah.
He needs to make some moves to kind of balance his team out a little bit more.
Yeah, I would agree with his rotation. He's got a good rotation. It's very good at the top between Nola, Glasnow, Giolito. That's one of the best starts of the rotation that I've seen in this league. So his pitching is very good. He's got a very good pitching staff, but his closers are not. I mean, Karinchak is one of the best relievers in the league, but he's not the closer. He's going to be more of like a high leverage guy. They have Clase and Whitgreen who are going to be closing out most of their games for them. I don't think he gets more than 10 saves this year. And the same can be said for Daniel Bard. Not only is he playing in Colorado, so he's going to have a higher ERA, and playing in Colorado doesn't just mean more home runs. It also means less, we talk about more batting average, but it's less movement on your pitches because the air is so thin.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The ERA is going to be elevated there, and it's on a bad team, and who knows if he even has the job to himself. So I don't think he gets 20 combined saves between those two relievers, but he does have Rosenthal hurt. Valdez seems to be the closer in Baltimore, and Trevino. I don't know what's going on there with Trevino. I guess maybe him and Diekman are splitting while Rosenthal gets back. So I guess maybe he can get out a little ahead of the curve if you can put some of those guys in there. But that in the back end of his rotation his rotation I really like Eflin, and I really like John Means. I think this is actually one of the best rotations in the league.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, no doubt.
All right, I originally had Chad for a B plus. I'm gonna bump Chad up to an A-. I just changed my mind. I really like Chad's rotation. Kind of change. I think he can find some closers on the waiver wire, and he has plenty on his roster. So I think his pitching staff, he's got a complete pitching staff. He's got 5 good pitchers. He's got 3 really good pitchers, and his lineup, he can move around some things. He's got a top tier lineup. He's got plenty of trade bait if he needs to get a guy that can get on base or steal some bags. And I really like what he did with this draft. He's going to probably need to find some stolen bases somewhere, maybe some on base percentage. But if he stays healthy, look out.
And again, that's a big concern. And in fantasy football, I don't like saying the healthy thing too much because football injuries happen all the time. But I think baseball over the course of a season, you do see guys that go down a lot. Mm-hmm. And I actually have Chad at a C- because I think he's very, very top heavy in what he has. I like his rotation, but I'll be honest, in terms of like my personal opinion on those guys, I would have spent on, I don't want to say 3 different guys, but to me, like Glasnow, like, okay, can he stay healthy? He's pitched 100 innings one time in his career, and he's been a little shaky in the past. Giolito's, I think, starting to turn into a guy that you can say is consistent and does a really good job. But Aaron Nola, again, at 37, I don't think that's bad, but I just don't know if I would have spent it on it. I think this is still one of the better rotations, but I have him at a C- just because I think on base percentage is going to be troubling. Stolen bases is going to be troubling. Even with all those power guys, I think only one of them are projected for 100 RBIs. So I think there's some holes here, but if he does the right moves, he can sure him up. But I got him at a C-.
All right, cool. Now, Eric, I'm gonna have to turn this over to you. My dog really needs to go out, so we're gonna skip David's COVID-free team, and I'm just gonna let you razz on Krim Crew's team. You can say anything you want about your good pal Jordan, anything about his team, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
All right, sounds good. Krim's team, we're gonna take a look at it now. Krim is my buddy. We met on, again, Xbox about, geez, 12 years ago now. He's a Panthers fan, unfortunately. He's also a Canadian, so we had to get the diversity in there. And if you guys were in the draft room, he was all about making sure that was well known. But yeah, unfortunately for him, I don't mind his team. He's got a very star-studded lineup. In fact, he kind of took a very, very similar approach to Kyle in getting stars. He spent a lot of money on Juan Soto, and again, $49. I don't mind that. Now, I think Juan Soto has a very good chance of winning NL MVP. This is a guy that has the potential to hit 350, 360 in a season without a doubt. The thing with Soto is I think I would rather spend that money on Acuna because of the extra stuff he provides. He provides those 40 steals. He provides probably the similar power, probably similar RBIs. But I mean, you still get a projected 13 steals from Soto, so that's not bad. That's not a knock on him at all. I think that's a great value. Tatis at 46. For a guy that hasn't played 100 games, I know he's a superstar stud. That's going to be one of those moves where I mean, you're basically saying he's worth Trout at this point. That's a lot. And I know those super top star guys were going for around this amount, but for a guy that hasn't played 100 games, and I think Tatis is going to be great. So this is, again, not a knock on him, but that's a lot of money. He paid more for Tatis than was paid for Trout. And that's when you start getting into those questions of value and how these things are going to shake out as the year progresses. I think overpay wise, I think Krim technically I don't really see that he overpaid on anybody. And I actually have that for a couple teams that I don't see like a huge big overpay on Krim's crew. I think you could argue, some of his guys like Teoscar, what does he provide? Last year, 2020 was great, but if you really look at his sample size over his career, on base percentage is always horrible. He doesn't steal bases. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if last year was a fluke for him or not. But he's got the star power on the offense. He's got Soto. He's got Tatis. I think Biggio is nice. We'll see what Alec Baum can do. But Rhys Hoskins, I think at $11 is amazing. I know I say you can get first baseman all over, and I think Krim did that. Again, when I think you can, Jose Abreu is great, but to get Rhys Hoskins at $11, and I know he wasn't that good. He wasn't like great last year, 10 home runs, 26 RBIs, but his on base percentage is always killer. Usually hovers around 400. Really good stuff there. The thing for me is the rotation. I think the rotation is a question mark for Krim, and I think he actually got a good value on Kershaw. I know a couple people might have scoffed at that, but Kershaw is still one of the absolute best pitchers in baseball. I mean, this is a guy, I know he had a shaky start his first time out, and you wonder what his inning limits are going to be as his career goes on. But I saw a lot of fan graphs have Kershaw still valued at about a $34, $35 pitcher. So I don't necessarily mind the 27 that he spent on Kershaw, but his rotation is older. I mean, is it one of those things where a Kershaw and a Morton fall off soon? What does he have after that? That's kind of the question mark for me. But he definitely spent big on the star power in the lineup. Soto and Tatis, you got to hope are going to carry him very far. And I think he got some good solid guys to surround that. Hoskins at 11, Biggio at 10. I think Salvador Perez, again, I'm not saying you spend big on catchers. And ironically enough, I've never been a huge Salvador Perez guy. But if he somehow keeps going with the season he put up last year, the on base percentage came from nowhere because his average was 333. His on base percentage is usually criminally, like horribly low. But at $7, that can be really good for Krim's crew. Kyle, take over. What do you think?
All right. So I don't know. I didn't really catch what you caught before that, but I'm just going to go through really quickly what I got for his team. Biggest value, I don't really see much, but I'm going to say it's Tatis for 46. When you talk about a guy who's got a ceiling to be a 40-40 guy, like you talked about with Acuna, at a position in shortstop, like, yeah, shortstop has a lot of good players, but shortstop kind of falls off a cliff. There's like 11 guys, and if you don't get one of those 11, then you are screwed. So it's kind of a little bit top heavy when it comes to that. Biggest overpays, I got Biggio for 14 and Happ for 13. I know you mentioned you like Biggio for 14. I just don't really see it with him. I'm struggling to see what the real ceiling is with him. When I look at Krim's team, he's another one of those teams where I'm like, man, what is he good at? Like, what What is his strength? I see a little bit of power here, but I don't think it's the power that we saw with Chad's team. So I don't think he kind of measures up there. I think it does have a little bit of a high ceiling when it comes to power, but I just don't really think that that it's at that level. And then his pitching, I'm not a big fan of his pitching either. I'll be honest. Some of the guys that are kind of approaching the late parts of their career, Kershaw is still dealing. No disrespect to Kershaw. He's the best of the generation. But he's getting up there. How much longer can he do it? Is he going to be able to keep him for $27? Charlie Morton, again, another guy who's really getting up there in age. And if those guys take a dip at all, then he's left with nothing in his rotation. He is relying on those guys to keep up what they've been doing for the last 10 years. And if they start to tail off, then he is screwed, because Joe Musgrove, Tariq Skubal, and T1 Walker sure as hell are not going to carry your rotation. And those guys are certainly going to elevate your ERA. Between Skubal, you don't know what you're getting. He's a first-year guy. He pitched a little bit last year, but typically those first, second-year pitchers have higher ERAs. T1 Walker's probably going to have a 5 ERA. Joe Musgrove, big question mark. I'm shocked that he did not get taken by one of our resident Pirates fans. But his rotation leaves so much to be desired. Edwin Diaz is notorious for having a high ERA as well. And Alex Reyes has not been like an elite relief pitcher either. So I think he's going to be the last in the league in ERA more than he's going to be like bottom 5 in ERA, because I've already roasted Bryce, and I'll roast some other people for their rotations. But he's going to be bottom in the ERA. I don't know what his staff is going to do, but I don't think it's a good pitching staff. And I think his lineup is a good lineup. He's got some good power, but I don't think it's great.
And that's the thing for me is like projections wise, we can see where Kershaw and Morton fall off. But if they pitch how they've pitched in their career this year, and if Nate Pearson can step in and be that bona fide prospect at $3, and coming in that rotation, and if Musgrove can hover around his 4 ERA, get his 9 Ks per 9. I think Crimson's rotation really isn't that bad. I like you said, a year or two from now, he's going to be spending a lot of money in the reserve draft or having to make trades, because this isn't something that's going to hold up over time. But if they can pitch to what they've done in their career, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah. And the thing about his team too, that I don't like, just because I'm on a roll here, he's got so many prospects on his team already that he doesn't have the flexibility to fix any of these holes with the waiver wire or with free agency, because he's not going to drop some of these guys like Torkelson and Royce Lewis and Josh Rojas and Alejandro Kirk, because like they have keeper value to them. Actually, Rojas he can drop because he's a C player, but he drafted a lot of these prospects that he's going to be tied to, so he's going to be a little limited on what he can do throughout the year. He's got a few guys that he can move here and there, but it does limit him a little bit on what his capabilities are. But his team does have a little bit of everything. I don't think his rotation is the worst rotation I've seen. It has some potential to it. I mean, Tariq Skubal, top prospect. Joe Musgrove, I do like the pitcher Joe Musgrove. Charlie Morton and Clayton Kershaw, they've had the track record. I just don't know what they're going to give you going forward. So, I mean, they have the potential there. And he's got some power. He's got a little bit of speed. He's got a little on-base percentage here and there, especially with Juan Soto, can make up for a lot of that. But with all that combined, I'm going to be hard on Jordan. I'm going to give him a C-.
I'm going to give Krim a C+. I like his team a little bit more than you. I think I like the rotation a little bit more. But again, when you take kind of the approach that you did, he spent big on 2 players, even bigger on those 2 players, Tatis and Soto. Again, one of those guys goes down. I don't want to say your season's over, but I mean, that's going to be tough to compete. And I'm not saying that that's possible. Who knows? Tatis has only played 100 games, but if I'm not mistaken, White Sox fans, he does have some type of injury history. So it's something to think about. So if one of those guys goes down, kind of similar to your team, big trouble. But I did give him a C+. I think he's going to be competing for a playoff spot.
Cool. All right, let's move on we're going to go back to COVID-free, who is David Luzak Wambolt. He's got a double last name. He is Justin's brother-in-law, sorry about that, who lives in Colorado. He's a Cubs fan, so he's going to be in the Cubs division. So that is David. With David's team, I have his biggest value at Ramon Laureano at 6. You see there?
I got as big as value, and I'm just gonna say two names quick. And again, it's me kind of riding the young gun train, but I'll say Posh and Sixto Sanchez. I mean, I know Sixto's in the minors, and you're probably rolling your eyes at me saying this right now because they're not uh gonna contribute right away. But
Good.
Sixto, it's at $6. I think he's gonna be a stud in Miami. I think he comes up this year and makes an impact. We'll see, but I know there's been some injury concerns on whether he's gonna come up soon. But I also really liked Christian Posh. I was trying to go after him. I was hoping I can sneak him in for something cheap, but that's a guy that seems like he's going to be playing quite a bit for Atlanta. Another young outfielder. We'll see what he can bring to the table. Last year in I don't think he really played much at all last year. Extremely limited time, but we'll see how those go out. I think he's got a really chance for some guys to pan out over the course of a couple of years.
I actually don't like Pache at all.
No, really.
He's a top prospect, but he's more of a defensive specialist, and
He
he's
is. Yeah, true. Yeah,
he's
great
not a guy
defense.
that's going to hit 30 home runs, and I don't think he's a guy that's going to steal 20 bases. So what
Right.
is he for that money? He's a defensive guy. He's playing in a good lineup, so maybe he gets on base a little bit, scores a lot of runs, and drives in a few RBIs. But I'm not a huge fan of his. His biggest overpay, I didn't have much. I really don't have one. It's just mainly just Soler for 15, I guess. If he
I think he's got a huge overpay. Huge,
really,
huge
let's
overpay.
hear it.
Yeah. I think it's Hater. I
I
mean,
looked at him, but if
God,
he's the top closer, which he has proven to be for the last 3 years
man.
now, 23 or what's he got? 23, right? 23 is okay.
Is it okay? I mean, I don't know what I think I put my stuff in right for Fangraphs. They don't have a single. They have Edwin Diaz at 12, Chapman 9, Hendricks 9, Hater they have worth $9. I mean,
Oh, I think I did mine differently I put mine in as you required two closers. So
okay,
because I figured that would be the standard, which is typically what most people did. So I
right.
formatted mine differently, which
S-
it said like Diaz was like
So
24.
that would definitely rise them up quite a bit then if it
Yeah,
makes you put, yeah. And so I just put in, you didn't have, because theoretically you don't have to have a
yeah,
closer, so that's
correct.
what they're listed as. And I just think he's nasty. He's going to get the strikeouts, yeah, he's going to get you the saves, but to spend 23 on a guy that's largely, again, looking at the K's, yeah, he's going to help. Or looking at the projections, the K's are definitely going to help. He's going to strike out a lot of guys, but
A
for a
four category
closer,
contributor.
yeah, for a closer though, a 3.05 ERA isn't fantastic. It's really not. And I just think that $23 is a lot for a guy that's going to help out in about two or three categories. I mean,
I think he's
honestly,
closer to a four category contributor. He's going to
I
get saves, he's going to get you ERA, he's going to get you WHIP, and he's going to get you more strikeouts than any other reliever will be. And
possibly, yeah,
he's going to typically pitch more innings than any other closers
right,
do. He's going to pitch more innings than the guys like Liam Hendricks and some of those other
yeah.
guys.
He,
So I think that he does provide a little bit more value than some of the other guys. I do think 23 might be a little bit much, but I could see why he would pay that
for
much
sure.
more. Let's see here. So for his strength, I like his rotation arms. He's got a lot of guys that are definitely high ceiling. Lance Lynn, Lance McCullers, Max Fried, Patrick Corbin, guys that we've seen pitch well. It's not question marks. It's guys that we've seen established pitchers pitch well. And I like some of the guys that he has in his rotation. What do you think about his pitchers?
I think you could also argue, and I think with him getting into the draft a little late, he realized, wow, like a lot of these star hitters are gone, and I think he decided, I'm going to go in on these pitchers. At least that's what it seemed like to me. Maybe that was a strategy going in no matter what. I think you can argue he's got one of the best rotations as well. Between I'm a huge McCullers fan. I know he's again had injury concerns in the past, but if he's healthy, I think he's a really good pitcher. Lance Lynn, we know what he can do. Does he fall off soon? Who knows? Max Fried, is going to be a guy in Atlanta that's going to get a lot of looks. He's pitching really, really good, pitched great last year. Patrick Corbin, another guy. I think you could argue, again, with not many teams focusing on pitching, the few that did, it's going to pay off. And again, Sixto Sanchez down there waiting in their wings. He's got a decent guy in Jordan Montgomery. I think he loaded up on pitching. But I will say this, he is lacking major. I think he's got the worst lineup in the whole entire
It
league.
is putrid. His lineup is absolutely putrid. I mean,
It's the
he's got
worst.
so
It's
many
the
names
worst.
in his lineup where I'm like, what is he gonna give you? Max Stacy, Cronenworth, Chisholm, Garrett Hampson, Michael Taylor, Yerman Mercedes, Ryan McMahon. Like, so all these guys, like, they're okay players, they're okay ball players, but like,
Right.
what are they actually bringing to your fantasy lineup? And they don't have high ceilings either. And there's just so
Who's
many
his best
holes.
hitter? Who's are we gonna say Yon Moncada? Are we gonna say
Oh,
Soler?
oh God, I didn't even think about that.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
really, who's his best? Who's his best guy in the lineup? I mean, really, Moncada,
I mean, I guess Moncada's got the highest ceiling, but maybe
Soler. I
Brandon
mean,
Lowe would be.
Brandon Lowe's the one he paid the most for. Verdugo is, yeah, I mean, it's I think it's by far and away the worst lineup in the league. And again, I know he missed a lot, and that could be a very good reason why.
Yeah, he
So
ended up he had to step away from the draft, and he actually only ended up spending. He's only got $189 on his
yeah,
entire roster, including his reserve roster. So
right,
he had like an extra $100 he could have spent, which would have definitely helped his lineup. Unfortunately, so I do
right,
feel bad that he wasn't able to add to it like he probably could have.
sure,
Would make things look a lot bit different. But he might be a guy that you might be looking to acquire some of these guys at the deadline. Some of you guys that have deadline. I think it might be. We'll have to see how his pitching, how long his pitching staff can keep him afloat. But he might be a guy that might be a seller at the deadline based on what his offense is providing us here.
certainly. And teams could be calling for pitching towards a deadline, and he's got it, no doubt.
Definitely. I gave him a D. What I give him? I gave him a D plus because obviously he's got huge holes on his offense, but I think his pitching staff is very good. So, as regards if draft as a whole, it did not go well for him, but I think his pitching will kind of carry him at least to like mediocrity or close.
Yeah, I got him. I gave him a D. Again, if he could just had two more solid guys in the lineup, just a couple more, I think he could compete because of his rotation. But I just don't see it happening. He's going to be having to make up a lot of hitting categories each and every week. He's going to have to hope some guys catch fire, and he's going to really hope in the head-to-head version of the league that he's getting one or two hitting categories a week, hoping to scrape those by and dominating in pitching categories every week. And that's hard to do. So I'm gonna give him
He
a
has
D.
the best pitching staff. I just think it's really good.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And that's the thing. He's going to almost need to have the best pitching staff to compete. So I gave him a D.
Yeah. All right. So we move on to Eroc's Dynasty
Hey.
Squad represent. I do think that you should have the nasty should be all caps. It should be the Dynasty Squad.
Yes, I like that. That's not bad.
Yeah. So that's why we're co-commissioners.
Heck yeah.
So why don't you walk me through your draft strategy, how it went when you got done with the draft. Tell me what your first thoughts were.
Well, obviously, based off last year, I went in with a completely different strategy, and I think I was the one that sat for a very long time because I didn't have a lot of money, and I don't want to say there was a little bit of buyer's remorse, but there was a time where I'm like, man, like I'm missing out on a lot of guys in the middle of this draft that I really wish I would have went after. But after looking at my team, and I usually don't like sitting here giving myself kudos, but I think draft strategy wise, I went in, I got a few big heavy hitters, I got a couple other hitters at really good values in the middle, and then I think my rotation wise, when we talk about depth and we talk about who I have, and I know it doesn't look great at the moment because of who's hurt and kind of the names in there, but I think when you throw Scherzer and Woodruff, and then when I got Robbie Ray, I know Eduardo Rodriguez has some injury concerns, but Severino, Robbie Ray are coming back eventually. When you look at that over the course of a season, Scherzer, Woodruff, Hendricks, Severino, Robbie Ray, that's a solid five in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it mixes a lot of the bags there. So I think I did a good job at getting value. I don't see a huge overpay on my end, but I think I was able to get top heavy hitters that should be good for a long time. I got to, if you notice, I don't think I have a dude in my lineup that's 30 outside of Altuve. And then sorry, Ramos as well, but catcher. But I think that was kind of my strategy. I wanted to get some big dudes at the top that I knew were going to contribute, and then really focus on getting value in the middle.
Yeah. All right. So, and looking at your squad, I mean, we obviously overpaid for Schwarber. You had to. We all knew you were going to. We all bid you up. So you'd have to pay 14 for Schwarber. But the disrespect of not putting him in your lineup. Oh my God.
When are they going to play? You know what I mean? Finally, right? Are they going to finally play tomorrow? There you go.
Tomorrow. All right. Yeah. Severino for $1 might have been the steal of the draft. That was
I was sitting there as the clock was ticking down, just like I would like my heart was pumping as that clock. I'm just like, if I get him at $1, that's nuts.
I wish I had one more roster spot to put him in. At that point, I think I had just taken Framber Valdez for $1, and so I didn't have a roster spot for him. Else I definitely would have. I probably would prefer Severino for $1 over Syndergaard for $9, to be honest, just because of the price difference there and when they're expected to be back. I really like Clint Frazier as well for $3. He's a guy that I really like. He was a guy that I was definitely targeting late. when I had all this money, but I ended up getting Mancini, I think, instead to fill that outfield spot. And so I couldn't get Frazier. But he's definitely a guy I would have gone after. I would have outbid you. You would have never had a chance. So I like the value you got for him at 3. Overpays Harper for 40. He's a good player. And he'll definitely provide value for your team. Definitely on base percentage will be huge. He'll carry you an on base percentage. I don't know if he's in that top tier of $40 players. I think
But let me ask you this though. I know you're a Harper hater, kind of. What fantasy wise does he not provide?
Let me look at his stats from
because the average is okay, but the on base percentage 100% makes up for that, right?
Yeah,
Then
so
you have the home runs. You get 10 to 15 steals a year. You get 100 plus RBI. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I'm not saying you got to count him as one of the top 5 players in baseball, but at $40, what does he not provide?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have a point there, especially when he had a 420 on base percentage last year and 13 home runs in just 58 games.
100 games at Tatis or Harper, for $5 less. I mean, that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, you're kind of for $40, you're putting him in that top tier of the guys like
sure, yes,
and the guys like who's Bellinger and those kind of guys. I just think he's just kind of one small tier below. But I mean, you might have a point there. You might have a pretty good value with Bryce Harper. I don't think he does have a little bit of injury concern.
Yeah,
not major. He'll miss a few games here and there. Maybe I'll have 1 or 2 DL stints. But you might end up being okay with him. And then Matt Olson for 17. I think he'll be okay. I think that'll be good value. But when I look at what I got for Luke Voit for $1 and
right, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of like, yeah, you can kind of find cheaper power. And, I go back to Nelson Cruz for 11. It's, Matt Olson's, I guess, young enough. You'll get more years out of him. And he's not currently hurt now. So you don't have to pay that discount. But if Matt Olson for 17 gives you another 220 batting average like he did last year and a low on base percentage, he doesn't draw a whole lot of walks, then that's kind of torpedo. It's going to nullify everything that Bryce Harper provides for you. Overall, I didn't think they were great overpays, but those are the 2 that I was looking at. Strengths, you probably have the best outfield in the league. I mean, Andrew Vaughn, Cody Bellinger, Clint Frazier, Bryce Harper. That is a damn good outfielder, a damn good outfield. Kyle Schwarber, we'll see what we get out of him. And you got some decent pop in your lineup. I don't think that you're up in the top tier like Jordan and Chad when it comes to the power. But I do think you have a lot of guys that can hit the long ball between Bryce Harper and Matt Olson and Devers and Vaughn, Bellinger, all those guys. You're gonna be up near the top in power. Hopefully Harper can carry in on base percentage. I don't see a lot of low on base percentage guys in your lineup other than Matt Olson. So I think you'll have one of the top offenses in the league. Your weaknesses would be your speed and your pitching depth, but I think even you alluded to it. You have plenty of arms once you get towards the end of the year. You can get some of these guys healthy and pitching well. I don't know what we're getting out of Rodriguez and Robbie Ray. They have a little bit of potential, but those are also guys that have had like 5 ERAs in their career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of your pitching depth leaves a little to be desired, but if you can get some of those guys healthy and pitching well, it definitely has the potential to be a top tier rotation. But I will also say this. I think you are a Max Scherzer back injury away from irrelevance. I think if Max Scherzer, he's getting up there in age. I think he's had some back troubles. He's had some spasms. He's had some vertigo stuff or whatever he had, in the postseason. I think if you don't get 20 starts out of Max Scherzer, then it is going to hurt you.
Oh yeah, for sure, no doubt about it, because he's obviously, no doubt about it, the top guy in my rotation. But even last year, obviously those aren't the numbers you expect from Scherzer, the high ERA and this and that. But the one thing that hasn't been gone from him is his strikeouts. He still had 92 strikeouts in 67 innings last year. So even if he quite isn't the $37 player, if he's pitching 150 innings, he's getting 200 plus strikeouts. Yeah. So that's what I like from Scherzer. Maybe he's not worth the 37. Is that a guy I have it when he's 39? Probably not. But for this year, if he struggles, I drop that money. I get another guy, but yeah, Scherzer could be a big concern.
Yeah. And then the one thing I think you need to add is you need to find some playable speed. You have speed in Jonathan Villar, but are you ever going to put him in your lineup when he's not really a starter? He's more of a utility man. So, right. I mean, he might provide you some steals. 44 is being very generous for him if he's not playing, every day and he doesn't really have a normal spot in lineup. He's not playing today. So, what are you really getting on a Jonathan Villar? And aside from that, you don't really have a whole lot of speed. You got some here and there. Altuve's steal numbers have gone down every year. Devers isn't a huge stolen base guy. Bellinger isn't stealing. I mean, he'll get you a handful, but not a ton. Frazier, maybe 10. Bryce Harper, 10, 15. So you're getting a few, but I think you still need one more like 30 stolen base guy that you can actually play. But maybe Willie Castro can be that guy for you.
Yeah, and that's really Castro's on my mind a lot late in the draft, and I was curious to see if someone was going to pounce on him because again,
My dad's definitely interested in him.
Yeah, small sample size last year, but man, for how young he is, if he turns into something, when you look at those numbers he put up last year in Detroit, I think he's one of those guys I look on in a couple of years and go, wow, for $7, this. I have really good short. I know it doesn't look like it now. I got Chris Taylor starting at short, but between Castro and Wander Franco these next couple of years, I might get someone calling my line for one of those guys.
You might very well might. All right, I gave you a modest B.
All right,
not an A, not
too bad.
Great, but I think your pitching when it's all said and done, I think your pitching won't be the top staff in the league. You need a lot of things to go right. You need a lot of help out of some of your injured arms, and you're counting on guys like Robbie Ray and Eduardo Rodriguez who just haven't proved to be consistent guys before. So I think your rotation needs a little bit to be desired. You're still one or two pieces away in your offense from having a really good offense. I don't think you're top in offense. I don't think you're top in pitching, but I think you're probably about top 6 in both.
For sure. And I will throw this out here too. And I was, again, this was one of the reserve guys that they got. Jake Odorizzi. Watch out for him this year too, because I know 2020 only pitched 13 innings. 2019, that guy put on an absolute season. 3.51 ERA, 180 Ks and 160 innings. Again, I know my rotation looks really sketchy off jump, but I do think I got some names in there that can kind of push through. But we'll see. I gave myself, I usually give myself a bad grade just because who knows? But I gave myself a B+ after looking through my team. There was a little bit of me after the draft that was like, I don't know. But after looking through all the teams and stuff, I think my squad is decent. But standings wise right now, not looking that way. Not looking that way 3 days in.
Next, we have Pablo Sanchez, which is our dear friend Eddie Mazer. Really good friends with Tyler Penny. We went to high school with Eddie. We're all pretty good friends with him. I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you tell me what you think Eddie's best value is?
And this is defending champ, right?
Defending champ. Thank you. How could I have missed the defending champ?
This is the defending champ, and it was not even close last year. He ran away with it, did a really good job. I will say this: looking at his team, you just want me to break it down or overpay, underpay, break it down for him? I think he's got one of the worst teams in the league. I think he's got a lot of value at a lot of positions. I think Moustakas at 15, McNeil, Muncy. I think that infield looks great. Story at 36, no problem. Can Alvarez bounce back? I think he drafted way too many prospects. He's got no bench depth. He Garrett Mitchell, Brandon Marsh, Jason Dominguez is going to be the next hot shot dude, but he's 18.
Yeah, but he's not going to be up for 2.5 years. So you're going
to. I mean that was exactly. I mean he's got way too many prospects. I'm not a huge Nick Madrigal guy for fantasy. That's going to be a guy that's got to hit 330, 340 a year because he's not providing anything else. He's not going to provide anything else other than that. He's not going to hit home runs. He's not really going to steal bags. So if he's hitting 260, 270, he's not in your lineup. Pitching wise, Greinke at 21, he's getting old. I'm not sure. Kente Maeda, you're telling me that's your 1 and 2 in your rotation? I mean, I'm sorry. I know Eddie won the league last year, and this is coming from the guy that came in last. So it sounds very bad to say, but I think Eddie's got one of the worst teams in the league.
I look at Eddie's squad and I am absolutely disgusted. I don't see a single value on this team. He big time overpaid for so many players. 11 for Fletcher, 11 for Votto, 8 for Will Smith is okay, but I don't even think he's going to play more than half the games. They want to protect him. 15 for Moustakas, 11 for McNeil, 19 for Muncy. These guys are all awful values. What is happening here?
Yeah, I don't know.
Alvarez can be good, but for 24, when Nelson Cruz went for 11, that's a huge overpay. And again, he has no flexibility because of all of his prospects he has here. Is Zach Greinke his ace? If Zach Greinke is your ace, you are fucked, okay?
Yes.
You're not going anywhere.
And take a look at those ERAs. I mean, does he have a guy? I mean,
John Gray still pitching in Colorado. Good luck. You're going to need Dylan Bundy to be like a top 10 pitcher in the league to hit his absolute ceiling if you want to even be relevant this year, because this lineup is just absolutely putrid. And what is my value? My value is that he has no value at all. And his overpay is everyone. I look at his entire roster. His entire roster is just nothing but overpays. And I'm sorry, Eddie. I know you're the defending champion. You deserve much more respect than this, but I'm sorry. It is just not good.
Yeah, I can't help but agree. I mean, almost everything you said. It's hard to find like a huge value here. I will say I do think Jeff McNeil is probably the big one. I think if you look at his numbers in 2019, 23 home runs, 75 RBIs, 318 average, almost a 400 OBP, and you can get that for $10 at a position that's not very deep. That's about the one I looked at that was like, I like that. I've always been a Jeff McNeil guy. Hitting sixth in that order, he's going to get a lot of chances to drive in runs. So that was kind of the one that stuck out to me. But you nailed it on the head between the prospects, the interesting prospects, I don't know. He won the league last year, so this is a wait and see game. But man, I think it's the worst team in the league.
Yeah. And with that, it's like he one thing I will say that is positive about his team is he does have a lot of lineup flexibility, which I figured you were going to allude to because that's your big thing is flexibility. He's got a lot of guys that are dual eligible. Max Muncy's a huge one. Moustakas eligible at 3 places. David Fletcher eligible at 3 places. But like they're all eligible at the same places. And I'm going to go back to Bryce's team just because I'm not done roasting him. And I didn't get to I forgot. That's why I want to go back and roast him a little bit more. If you look at his eligibility, he drafted 3 second basemen. He's got 3 top 10 second basemen. So yeah, he's got some flexibility between Hira getting 2 positions and Ketel Marte getting 2 positions and Albies getting 2 positions. But like they're all eligible at the same position. So what's the point of having the flexibility if you drafted your top guys all eligible at the same position? We're seeing that a little bit with Eddie's team as well. There's not a lot to like here. Jordan Alvarez is going to be a name that I think should be the biggest target for teams at the deadline, especially if he's outfield eligible, which he is. That could turn a lot of teams.
Because last year, I don't think he was. I think last year, I don't know if we changed that or not. I thought last year he was listed where you could just play him at utility.
I lowered the thing to 8 games
Okay.
Because based on normally it'd be 20, so 8 to 20 would be like 60, or because they play like 30% of a season, so it should do 30%.
Because I had Jordan last year, and that was one of the killers for me. That just ended my season. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so I like what he did. I like Bobby Witt. So maybe going forward, he might have some potential on his team. Maybe he can be like the Rockies and trade Trevor Story at the deadline. But yeah, it's not looking.
But is that not another concern? As good as Trevor Story is, if he gets dealt at the deadline, he's not playing in Colorado anymore. I mean, I think, is that not something you have to take into consideration? Yeah, I mean,
it's a little bit, but Trevor Story has also been one of the top shortstops.
Sure, 100%. Yeah,
probably the most consistent shortstop of anyone. He stays healthy, plays well.
Free agency.
I gave Eddie a D. It's not an F just because he won the league last year, but I gave him a D.
All right, well, double D it up because I gave him a D as well.
I do love double Ds.
Can't go wrong there.
So next, we'll move on to Pistol Pete's platoon, who is managed by Pete Panagakos. Pete has had some mixed returns on some of his fantasy squads. We've seen Pete be at the top. We've seen him be at the bottom.
Definition of hit or miss. Yeah,
he's definitely some hit or miss. I want you to take it away on what you see as Peter's values.
Peter, I think actually did a pretty good job in this draft. I think he's got a pretty solid squad. I think he did a good job of kind of going around the draft and seeing a lot of things. I will say this though, homerism, because paid too much for Tim Anderson. I'm sorry, he paid way too much for Tim Anderson. I know he's going to be a big average guy, but again, if that average is not there for Tim Anderson, you're going to get a little bit of pop. You're going to get not a ton either. The stolen bases, we'll see if they're still there, but we'll find out about that on Tim Anderson. But I know he's a big fan of his. The other kind of value I have is actually Gavin Lux. I don't know how much he will play, but he's got 16 at bats already. He's doing good to start the season. He's in that Dodgers lineup. And again, at a position in fantasy that's pretty thin, especially when you just alluded to the fact that the last team we talked about Bryce's team had 3 of the top second basemen in the league. Gavin Lux at $1. When we talk about prospects and who's coming up and who's that's a guy that when I saw pop up on the board, I'm like, wow, I wish I could spend more money, because not tons, but for him to get Gavin Lux at $1 hitting in that lineup the whole season, great value.
And weirdly enough, Gavin Lux played last night and they benched Corey Seager. Now I know it was just rest, but they're just basically proving Gavin Lux has been in the lineup every single game so
He's
far.
going to be a stud.
He's
He really
playing
is.
shortstop too. I mean, he's playing second base most days, but he played shortstop last night instead of Corey Seager. For me, I absolutely loved Peter's draft. I am enamored with his team. I think he did an incredible job.
Yeah.
I mean, all of his values, and I'm going to talk about here in a sec. Jared Walsh for $1, awesome. He's playing so well so far. Gavin Lux for $1, great. Mark Canha, as you can see, is hitting leadoff for Oakland. That's not a coincidence. He's the leadoff hitter for Oakland for $1. Yeah, he's a stud. He's probably going to score 100 runs. He might hit 25, 30 home runs. He's going to be a good on-base percentage guy this year for $1. Him and Eugenio Suarez for 16. Like, that is a guy that probably should be more of like a $30 guy because he could hit 50 home runs this year. He could lead the league in home runs for $16, Eugenio Suarez. So I really love a lot of the values he got here. He overpaid for some of his guys. Dylan Cease for 10, he overpaid for. Gary Sanchez for 10 for a catcher, for a guy that may not, he might torpedo your on-base percentage, but he could also hit 29 home runs. So, I mean, if you really like Gary Sanchez, you want to pay 10 for him, by all means. And I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to rag on Manny Machado. Hate Manny Machado for 29. Of course, that's an overpay just because I hate that guy so much. So he maybe overpaid on a few guys, but I mean, he backed it up so well at the end of the draft. And what I was going to say is I look at the $1 guys that Peter got. Gavin Lux, Jared Walsh, Mark Canha, compared to the $1 guys that Jay got, where it's like Randall Grichuk and those other scrubs that he has.
Make or break your team.
Yeah, it's night and day compared to what Peter did late in the draft, compared to what Jay did late in the draft, which is going to lead to the grade that I'm going to give Peter, but I'll let you go on before we get to that.
I think, and there's two weaknesses for Peter's team though, and I think they are quite alarming. If you sort by on base percentage, he's got about four good. I mean, I know when you're in the 340 range, that's considered really good on base percentage, but it does fall off quite a bit. Carlos Correa, I know he's a big name, but fantasy perspective wise, he's kind of an iffy player sometimes. That's why I think I was a little surprised seeing him go for $11, but that's kind of about right for what he provides fantasy wise. But look at some of those guys: Castellanos, Sanchez, and Enrique Hernandez. I don't know how long they're going to stay in the lineup, but those on base percentages are going to drag him down bad. And the second thing is, and I've said this for a couple teams, his bench is all prospects. His entire bench is prospects. And I will say this: I think if there was a combo of a team that had the two best prospects, I think it is Peter. I think Rushman and Blade are both guys that can come up this year and make an impact. And they're going to be guys that you can have for a while. The thing is, he was excited at getting Rushman, and he's going to be a stud. I think he's one of those guys that could come up in the bigs and be one of the best hitting catchers right off bat. But he got Rushman at $8 though.
$8 for a catcher.
Wilson Contreras is $9, and he's playing now, and he's one of the best hitting catchers now. So
you even Rushman to come up and be Wilson Contreras,
right? And that's what I'm saying. It's a great
learning curve to catchers when they get to the league. They have so much other stuff to learn, to focus on,
right?
Framing, pitch calling, getting to know their pitchers. They can't focus on their hitting. You don't see catchers that come up as prospects and play well. Look at Danny Jansen. We all thought Danny Jansen was going to come up 2 or 3 years ago, just light the world on fire, and he is yet to break out because he can't hit because he's had to focus on everything else about being a big league catcher. Same thing with Joey Bart last year. He came up, he didn't play well. He made a fine catcher, but he is not a fantasy relevant player this year.
And I do think Adley might change that mold with how good he will hit. But again, like you said, still at $8, he's going to be maybe a later call up, like a July, August one. And then at that point, it's like, I'm not saying I do think he will provide value, but at the catcher position, if he played somewhere else, there's more value there. But at the catcher position, it's just not there because Wilson Contreras, you could have had for $1 more.
Yeah. So I wanted to go A+ for Peter, but I do see a few gaps. So I said some of the things that he overpaid for. I did, again, as the draft as a whole, I love what Peter did, but he does have some gaps. His rotation is great. It is Flaherty, Strasburg, and Corbin Burns. Like, say no more. Like, you're not going to have a bad rotation if you have those three guys if they stay healthy. But after that, you got Dylan Cease and Luke Weaver leave a lot to be desired. They kind of gross me out a little bit. Cease, I don't know what we're getting out of Cease. He didn't pitch well. He had no command.
I like Denelson a lot, though. I know he's hurt, but Denelson, I think that
he's a great four. If he can stay healthy, he's a great 4. And he's got some guys in Spencer Howard. If Spencer Howard can get back to what his prospect pedigree was, then maybe his rotation is going to be very good. So I do like some of the arms he has there, but towards the back end of his rotation, he's got some question marks. Same thing with his closers. Melanson, he's in a timeshare in San Diego. He's not necessarily the closer, but he might get some saves. Merriweather, he's the closer for now. He already rushed to the waiver wire to get Merriweather. He might get some saves going forward, but who knows if Toronto's going to stick with one guy. And so he doesn't. And then Diekman, I guess he's on his bench, but he should be getting saves in Oakland. I don't know what's going on with their timeshare of saves there, but he's going to just stay on the waiver wire just like I am. And he's actually beat me to the waiver wire now on some of these save guys. I know I still need some closers as well, but he's going to stay on that. So he's got some weaknesses in saves. He needs some more rotation depth, and he needs a few more steals as well. He doesn't have hardly any speed on this roster outside of Manny Machado, Gavin Lux.
Even way worse than mine. Yeah, it's bad.
So, I mean, he does have some gaps. So I am going to go A for Peter. I wanted to go A+, but I am going to go A. I really loved a lot of his values. I think he did really well in the draft.
I agree. I gave him a B+. I think he's one of the best teams in the league. Like I said, there is concerns though, because again, I know when you have injuries, you can put him in your injury reserve spots, but it is a little scary seeing all prospects on your bench. And I know that might pan out for him, but that's tough. And then obviously, like you said, stolen bases, on base percentage is going to be an issue. But in terms of balance, he's got a great rotation and he's got a great lineup. And that's not something that's easy to do when a lot of teams had to focus on one or the other and kind of nitpick and find some value in certain areas. I think he found value in the whole team. And I agree with you 100% that I think Peter is definitely one of the better teams in the league.
One thing to keep in mind, though, is that right now we have the rules. You can only keep 12 players. And I'd kind of like having it at 12 just so you can't keep everybody and run it back. You kind of have to make some roster decisions. But like if we're looking at his keepers, which 12 he's going to keep, he's going to want to keep his prospects, right?
So I mean, if you're keeping him on the team the whole year, you'd want to, and that's 4.
Yeah.
You're going to keep Gavin Lux at $1 at 5.
Yeah, that's 5. You know, a Correa at 11 is a good value. He's going to want to keep Jared Walsh for $1. You know, 6, 7, Yelich 8.
Yeah, right.
You know, so it's like they start to add up, and it's like he might have to throw back a guy like Strasburg at 21, or you know, he can't keep everyone. So that's going to be something to keep our eye on. Is like, yeah, you might draft 8 prospects every year, but you can only keep 12 guys the following year. So I think I'm going to kind of run into a roster crunch at the end of the year. It might have to be a discussion that it's going to have to be had, because I do have that in the Constitution. You can only keep 12, but you guys might want to try and keep more of that. That's something we might want to talk about. All right, we got 3 more to go. We are going strong. We're at the 2-hour mark with 3 more to go. Okay, let's power through. We got sliding into the DMs. That is my cousin, Christopher. He has been in the league last year, starting with the baseball. I've done a few fantasy leagues with him in the past. But for my values for Christopher, I really only have one value, and it's barely a value. I don't even know if you'd consider it a value, but it's JD Martinez for 18. If JD Martinez can get back to his form, I know he was a big replay guy, how he didn't get his replay review in the dugout or whatever last year, and that's why it caused him to kind of play so horribly. But if he can get back to being how he was before, where he was like 10 straight years of hitting 35 home runs, 100 RBIs, and hitting 290, then it's going to be a good value at $18. But he is getting up there in age, and you might disagree with that valuation.
Yeah, the thing with Chris's team is I think the value I have for him is that what we're going with first, the value, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think Aaron Savali at $3. I mean, that's really good. I think he pitched. I know he's a little shaky last year, but the year before in 2019, he was putting up some really good numbers, and I wonder if he can continue that. Sean Manaea is another guy. I know he's getting. I don't want to say getting up there in age, but he was the guy that was a prospect for a while. You really look at his numbers in the past. I know again last year a little bit of a higher ERA, but he's put together some really good seasons as well. Not a big strikeout guy, but I think Buehler and Anderson at the top is a pretty good rotation. Spends a lot on Anderson for not much of a sample size though, and I think we could say that for a few players on his team.
Yep, I had Anderson as his biggest overpay. I mean, $20 for a guy that's only pitched a quarter of a season in his career. I mean, I like Ian Anderson just as much as the next guy, and I was definitely in on Ian Anderson. I probably would have paid about 15 for him, but 20 is quite a bit for a guy that you don't necessarily know for a fact what you're getting. But they have him projected for 163 innings, 179 strikeouts. So he's going to be a pretty decent strikeout guy. he was a guy that wasn't a high prospect either. He doesn't have that prospect pedigree. So it's kind of like a Randy Rosarena. It's like, what are you really getting? He got hot for a month or two in a weird year. Is he going to be a $20 player going forward?
Yeah, and my overpay is actually, and I like both these guys a lot. I think they're studs. I'm a fan of this team moving forward. But again, we're talking a lot, and for a keeper league where you can keep them for a while, these I could be eating my words in here because, and I think I will be. But it's tough for me to see that your two biggest players that you spent on outside of Lindor and Alonso was Vlad at 28 and Bichette at 30. And I don't think those are huge overpays, but I think they're about $10 too much on either. I
Yeah.
could understand Bichette at about 25 because I think this is a kid that really could be in the MVP race. I know that Vlad also has lost a lot of weight and he's looking good so far. So again, these are guys that I think could very much be worth this much. But it's like when you see what other established players that have done it in the big leagues have done before at that price, I think those were about $7, $8 on both those guys, a little too much.
Yeah, Vlad, I was probably more of like a 22, 23, but he's a guy that he could hit 50 home runs.
He could 100%. Yeah.
His ceiling is so high. So you kind of have to buy that ceiling a little bit. You got to pay for it. I don't see the same ceiling for Bichette like you do, but he has played really well. I know Justin was in on the bidding of him. He's a big fan of Bo Bichette. When I'm thinking about the strengths of this team, I got nothing. Sorry, Chris, but what do you see as Christopher's biggest strengths?
I think his strength is actually, I think he's got a good lineup. I mean, Alonso is going to bring power. You just said Vlad could do it. Lindor is one of the best hitting shortstops in the league outside of, his a little bit lower on base percentage. But between JD Martinez, Bo Bichette, Lindor, Guerrero, Alonso, I don't really think it's a bad lineup. Obviously there is some holes in there when you look at guys like Edman, what is he going to provide? Adam Frazier, we'll see what he provides. Benintendi at $1. He's still only 26 years old. Can he still kind of see what he can do? The rotation's decent. I don't think it's great. Again, I think this is just one of those very, very average teams, but it's also one of those teams, like you said, I think could have a ceiling because if these guys really are their potentials, I think that's a pretty good core lineup of those 4 or 5 names.
Yeah, I think that he does have some good names in his lineup, but if you're in week 2 and you're starting a lineup that has Tommy Edman, Adam Frazier, Benintendi, and Zach Collins in it, how good is your lineup really? I mean, those
Right.
like some big holes with guys that I don't really know what you're getting. I mean, what is Adam Frazier bringing to a fantasy team? I don't really know. Tommy Edman, maybe some stolen bases, and some flexibility, but like, what's his actual fantasy value? Again, another guy, what are you bringing? Zach Collins, another guy that's rostering 2 catchers. Zach Collins doesn't play every day. I don't know why we want to play 2 catchers. I think Nick Senzel, if he's healthy, he can provide a boost. I don't love the lineup, and I certainly don't love the rotation. The rotation's fine. I think it's got some guys that I like and a lot of people like. I mean, I like guys like Savale, Ian Anderson, Walker Buehler. I do. But all of those guys have pitch counts on them. Walker Buehler's not going to throw 200 innings this year. Neither is Ian Anderson. Neither is Aaron Savale. Sean Manaea might throw you 200 innings, and that might be the worst thing for your team because he might have a 5 ERA like he's had multiple times in his career. His ERA is typically like 4.5. And Freddie Peralta is kind of go back and forth between the bullpen and the rotation. I think he's in the rotation, but I don't know if he's there to stay. And then his relief pitchers, Colome is in a timeshare. He's not necessarily the closer. He's splitting time. Montero, okay, yeah, he might be the closer for a bad Seattle team. Awesome. He's not going to have a very long leash.
He's getting 25, 30 saves probably.
Oh, he's not getting 25, 30 saves, and Price is in the bullpen as well. So I don't really like, he doesn't have a single guy that's going to throw 200 innings this year. So he's going to struggle in strikeouts towards the end of the year. I hope he doesn't fizzle out because he's going to run out of pitchers and he's going to need a lot from this lineup. I think that he's another one of the teams. He just needs everything to go right. And it's just offense is just okay. But like I said, he's got too many holes in there. And he's going to need everything to go right in order to have a good year this year.
And again, the prospect thing again too. Riley Green, Cespedes, those are kind of interesting decisions. Kirilloff's a good one that can come up this year, but it's weird because I was the big prospect guy and I took 2. One that's Wander Franco, which was obvious, and then the other one was Keyboom. But I took like one of the least amount of prospects. I mean, some of these teams are loaded on 3. You even said yourself you didn't see that many being taken. I think you probably were a little surprised yourself just at how many were taken. I think that's going to hurt some teams. And the other thing too is, are we sure he's a Sox fan? Because we forget he does have Springer too. That's 3 Blue Jays. That's 3, and that's big spending.
Yeah,
3 Blue Jays.
there's going to be a lot of movement between him and Jordan this year.
Yeah, I mean he loaded up on him.
I was hard on Christopher. I gave him a D+. I don't love his team. I think he's got too many question marks. He's not going to get enough innings out of his rotation. He's got too many holes in his lineup. I don't like his team.
I gave him a C. I think he's got a very average team. Again, this is a team that if Manaea, Savali, Bueller, and Anderson, which I think could all pitch well, if they pitch well, he's going to be fine in the pitching categories. I know there's going to be some things he slacks in,
No, he
and
is, yeah.
right, and then you're going to have the big hitters, the Alonsos, the Guerreros, the Lindors really picking up the slack. I think he's going to be competitive in the league. I have him at a C.
All right. So we will move on to Team Special K, which is my father. His name is Phil. Phil's team, he's got some decent values. I will say off the top, he left just like I did about $20-$30 on the table, which is not great. He had some money to spend at the end, so his team might look a little empty, leave a little to be desired. But I do still love some of the values he got. His best value is definitely Shohei Ohtani. For 15, he could be the MVP of this season. He could be MVP of this season. He could play 2 more games before he's out for the rest of the year. But I think actually one thing I've heard and it kind of stuck with me was like, if Ohtani, if he hurts his arm, that could be the best thing for his fantasy value, because this is a guy that could hit 35 home runs if he was not pitching and if he was in the lineup every day. But that's his value I like the most. What do you see in this team?
I think he's got a very balanced team. I think he got really good values in Aaron Judge. Again, $21. I know that sounds like a decent amount for him, but when you factor in the fact that he can hit 50 plus home runs, if he returns to that form, and that's not even to say his forms the last couple of years were bad. This is a guy that's got almost a 400 career OBP. If he plays 150 games, he's hitting 40 plus home runs. $21, that's an absolute bargain at that. I think another one like a Brian Anderson hitting in the middle of that Miami order. I know for $1, like how do you not like that? He's a guy that, again, decent OBP guy, not going to provide a ton, but for $1, you can't go wrong there.
Yeah, it doesn't get talked about. Just a lunch pail guy.
Exactly. I will say this, and I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm not saying that at all. It might work out great. I don't think it's like an overpay, but I'm not a Trevor Bauer guy. I'm not. I think if you really look at his career numbers, he had a good 2020, which from what most people sound like, they're not putting a ton of stock into 2020. Not saying that he couldn't have figured stuff out, but he pitched like one good season other than that. This is not a guy that is just getting into the big leagues. He's 30 years old now. So maybe he figured it out. Maybe he Jake Arrieta'd it and he's going to be a stud the rest of his career, but I wouldn't feel comfortable paying 40 for Bauer, but I understand where that could be a huge value at the end of the year. But I think he's got a very, very balanced lineup. I disagree a little bit on the Ohtani thing because I think he needs to hurt his arm to be worth $15, because very similar to the catcher position, how do you not make that same argument for Ohtani? This is a guy that's going to maybe, based on past years, be in the lineup 115, 120 times. He's basically a really good hitting catcher in your lineup. And that's why I don't know if Ohtani is worth $15.
You could argue that. I can definitely see where you're coming from there. I think if we just look at his stats now, in 2018, he got 300 at-bats, which is probably less than what a catcher would typically get. And in those at-bats, he had 22 home runs, 61 RBIs, and a 285 average, 361 on base percentage. So his impact as a hitter is so
great.
large.
Yes.
I mean, it's elite. And he is actually seeing the lineup way more this year than he ever has in the past.
Good old Joe Madden.
Yeah, Joe Madden. We saw it on Sunday that he is in the lineup when he is pitching. Now,
if he's in the lineup 140 times, then yes, 100% worth that.
Exactly. And so you can pick and choose. Like if you want to put him as a pitcher, obviously you won't get his hitting stats and vice versa. But if you want to just put him as a hitter and ignore his pitching, I think he could be definitely a 30 home run, 90 RBI guy if he's, hitting in the top of that lineup and hitting well. His biggest overpay, Didi Gregorius for 6. He kind of got in a bind at the end. I was sitting next to him the whole draft. He had all this money to spend, and there was no shortstops left. So he just had to go 6 for Didi. It just had to be a shortstop. That's what I was kind of telling you earlier, how there's like 11 good shortstops, and it falls off a cliff. Yeah, Didi is where it falls off the cliff. So you have to pay 6 for Didi to get a serviceable shortstop. So he might need to make a trade there to kind of upgrade that shortstop position to maybe a guy that's got 2 quality shortstops. I know Justin's got Mondesi on his IR right now, so that might be the move there.
Yeah, like I said, overpay. I really think he did a good job of pretty much going market value. There's nothing that screams like, oh my god, like that's a huge overpay. Like I said, I'm not a huge Bauer guy. But I can understand where it comes in. But really, he's one of those guys that I put none for overpay because I don't really see anything that shocks me. I think Michael Brantley at 13, one of my favorite players. What a great value that is. He
Yeah.
got a lot of good value in his players. I think he's missing maybe one more stud bat.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And that's some of that money that he had left over could have definitely gone towards a stud bat. I think that his strength is going to be his rotation. He's got a lot of guys that I like, and I think he's got 5 good pitchers. He's got Bauer and Darvish. We know what they are. He needs ceiling from those guys, though. We can't have bad Darvish or bad Bauer because it'll torpedo his team. Bassett is a guy who played really well last year. I don't love him. He's kind of a flash in the pan kind of guy. I don't really know enough about him to be like, this guy's an elite pitcher. He's as good as he was last year. Malley is a guy I like. And James Paxton is a guy that I really like.
$4. What a great value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
$4. I actually have him in 2 other leagues. That's why I stayed away from him. I don't want to get the same guy because I know if I get him in 3 leagues, he's gonna need arm surgery in 2 weeks. So he's got his velocity back. He's back to throwing 97, 98. And so if he can get back to that form of where he was 2 years ago, where his velocity is back, he is going to be a force to be reckoned with, and he might have one of the top rotations in the league if he gets the ceiling from those players. Now, here's my question to you. What is the ceiling of this team?
It's tough because I think outfield wise, I think right around with me, I think he's got one of the best outfields in the league. What worries me is that infield because I think Hosmer's okay, Simeon's decent, Anderson, like I said, it's a good value, but Gregorius, I think outfielders in fantasy are a little bit easier to find, and there's a lot of people that have that as a position. I think he's going to struggle finding guys in infield to plug in. So I think the ceiling there is interesting because I think Betts, Brantley, Judge, and stuff like that are going to provide enough offense, but he might be lacking there. But you're right, this rotation could really carry him. I think there's a potential that he could be one of the best teams in the league. But you're right, if one of those pitchers blows up, Darvish has a 4.5, Bauer has a 4.5, whatever, then I think he's in big trouble. So I think it's one of the he's going to be a hit or miss team this year.
We saw Darvish the first year in a new city did not pitch well. He does not do well with adjustment well.
Right.
He likes being stable. He likes I think he's kind of setting his ways that way. When I was first looking at this team, I was looking at guys like Eric Hosmer and Marcus Semien and Brian Anderson and Didi Gregorius, like those infielders, Carlos Santana. And I'm like, God, like what is really the ceiling of this team? Because none of those guys are going to hit 35 home runs.
No.
None of those guys are going to be top 100 guys, I don't think. But then the closer I look at some of these guys where he does have Mookie Betts, he does have Michael Brantley, he does have Aaron Judge, Eddie Rosario, Shohei Ohtani, like these guys do have high ceilings. And then you look at his pitching staff, like we said, if he can get peak Bauer, peak Darvish, and he can supplement them with Paxton being back to what he was before, Chris Bassett, if he can get what he got from him last year, he doesn't need to take a step up. He just needs to do what he did last year. And Tyler Mahle, who's a kind of high strikeout guy who can eat a lot of innings for Cincinnati, he could have a very good rotation. He could have one of the top rotations if everything goes right. Now, he needs everything to look right. He needs everything to go right. He's got a lot of question marks. He needs a lot of things to happen. We've seen it from a lot of the guys, but he needs a lot of these guys to sustain it. If that can happen, he will have a very good, very well-rounded team. I like how he did. I gave him a B.
Yeah, I gave him a B minus, and I think again he does have Josh Donaldson on the bench, which could help out his infield a little bit. But I just think that is a really big concern, and I know I'm more into the positions than you because I got messed up with injuries last year, and not having guys that can play in different spots forced me, and I think that's going to be an even bigger concern this year with the prospects. It forced me to cut guys that I didn't really necessarily didn't want to, but it was tough decisions. And those guys that can play multiple positions are huge. And his infield, I mean, I think he's going to be searching for it, and he's hoping probably that he doesn't have to pick up an outfielder all year because I mean Betts, Judge, Rosario, Brantley, I mean he's hoping that he doesn't have to even touch those buttons this year and keep them in the lineup because that will be huge to his success.
Yeah, and Miles Straw, another guy who might steal 30 bases, hitting leadoff or was
Yes.
going to lead off for Houston. Looks like he's not going to lead off today, but I thought he might hit lead off for Houston. So the guy that's definitely got some potential there. He could be some trade bait for some of those teams that need those stolen bases. I forget who I said. I think was it your team that I needed? So you needed a playable 30 stolen
Yeah.
base guy.
Yeah.
We maybe slot in for Willie Castro. If Willie Castro's not pitching well, that might be a guy that you might want to go after. Price.
That is true. I got some shortstops. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right. So last we have Team T-Pain, which is Tyler Penny, friend of ours, went to high school with us, good friend of Eddie's as well. He is making a second turn through the baseball league. He has joined the football league. Was it his first year in football last year?
Second. Yep.
Okay. So Tyler with his team, I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about Tyler's team. His best value I see is Justin Turner for $1. He's got a very high ceiling. Justin Turner he might not be in numbers one of the best hitters in the league, but you ask pitchers who's one of the hardest guys to get out, they'll tell you it's Justin Turner.
Yeah, when I saw Justin Turner go for $1, that was insane because I know he's getting up there in age.
Hey, Dave, where are you at? Would you pass on Justin Turner for $1 and take Lourdes Randall Grichuk for $1 instead?
I know. It's this. I mean, Justin Turner is a 400 OBP guy year in and year out. He's a guy that's going to hit you 20 home runs. He's a guy. I mean, $1's insane, and I literally was like kicking myself when I saw him get up there and nothing was happening. I'm like, how is this happening?
I don't know if he's ever played 120 games though.
Right, but even still, at $4, he's hurt. Oh well, I mean, he's worth it, right? He's so worth it. Another value one that I had was interesting. I have a couple names out here that I think the Chris Sale one is interesting. Obviously, not going to be back for a little bit. And I'll also say this: Jason Hayward is not an awful fantasy player because he gets the OBP, and if he can hit like he did last year, I know this sounds crazy, but at $4, Jason Hayward is going to hit you 15, 20 home runs, get you an OBP of 360. He's just a solid fantasy guy. I mean, if he brings the power he did in 2019, 21 home runs, 350 OBP, 8 to 10 steals, whatever the case may be. I know it's kind of an weird one, especially being a Cubs fan, but and honestly, Mike Trout at 45 is that a bad value 3 years from now? No. I mean, $45. He wasn't even the most expensive player in the draft.
And it's Mike Trout we're talking about here.
Yeah, come on now.
I don't know. Jason Hayward, I mean, for $4, and I mean, you said he's a 360 on base percentage guy. He's actually only hit 360 on base percentage once in his career, and it was in an abbreviated season. So I don't know if we can rush to calling Jason Hayward a 360 on base percentage guy. He finally reached his potential once. In 2019, he finally hit 21 home runs, 62 RBIs. But if he's more like the guy in 2018 where he hit 8 home runs, 57 RBIs, and it was a 335 on base percentage guy, then he's not going to be worth $4 and he's not going to be in his lineup. So yeah, I guess you're hoping that he can just be a rock and just be a decent hitter, but I just don't know if it's going to be there for him. I think that looking at the way that Zach Davies pitched on Saturday or Sunday, I think that he could end up being his value for $4, which I don't know.
Totally.
He might have gone in the reserve draft for that. But I can't even remember if he was drafted, which draft he went in.
I will say this though with Davies, he's again one of those guys that because he's so ERA heavy, he's not going to get the strikeouts. If his ERA is hovering around 4, I don't know if it's worth being in your lineup though, and that's the question. Davies is going to have to stick around that low 3 range for him to be worth it.
All right, are you going to say the biggest overpay of the entire draft? Are you going to say it with me?
What?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah,
Goldie. Oh my God, $31 for Paul Goldschmidt. Get out of here. That is,
and it was a bidding war between him and was it Eddie? I don't know who he was bidding with, but it was interesting.
For Eddie to get him just to go with the rest of his team that he.
Right. I'll say this though, and I actually didn't do this for anybody else. I put 5 names that I think he overbid on.
Go for it.
I think he overbid on Goldschmidt. I think he overbid on Gleyber Torres. I think he overbid on Starling Marte. I mean, that's a guy that's not going to get. I mean, he's going to get you the steals, but I mean, he's going to get you a couple home runs here and there. But the on base percentage is going to be dragged down for $20. That's a lot. I also think he overpaid on a little bit, not as bad on Zach Wheeler, and because he's again not a big strikeout guy, and I also
it had to happen.
Yeah, and I also think I'm a big Stroman fan, but again, a guy that's not going to get strikeouts. His ERA hasn't been fantastic. I still think there's a little bit of potential for him to turn into like a 2.7, 2.8 ERA guy, maybe. His ERA has improved a little bit, but again, that's a guy that's really not going to get you any strikeouts. So I think for paying 17 for that, 28 for Glaber, 31 for Goldschmidt, I think he overpaid on a lot of guys.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. So overall, I guess his strengths would be he's got some speed. He doesn't have a ton of speed. He's got some speed. Dylan Moore, 25 stolen bases. Marte, 30. Mike Trout, maybe 11. Taylor Trammell should probably give him a few stolen bases. Maybe Glaber, Torres, Goldschmidt will hand you a couple stolen bases here and there. I don't see a whole lot else for his strengths. His weaknesses, he's got virtually no power. Outside of Mike Trout, I mean, he's got a lot of guys that just aren't going to hit a lot of home runs, especially based on what the projections show here. And his pitching, he is one of the worst pitching staffs in the league. I mean, you alluded to it earlier. He overpaid for Wheeler. He overpaid for Stroman. I mean, he doesn't really have an ace. He needs Wheeler to be his ace, and Wheeler is not an ace. And so I don't like his rotation. His hitting leaves a lot to be desired. What else do you see out of Tyler's team?
I pretty much agree with that. I think his lineup, I know he overpaid for a lot of guys. I actually think his lineup is okay. I think it's going to be like Trout and Glaber and Real Muto and Goldschmidt. They're all good hitters.
Yeah.
I think he overpaid for some of them. So I think his lineup is fine, but you're right. The pitching is going to drag him down immensely. I don't think he has a 1 or a 2 on his team. I think Wheeler's a 3. I think Stroman's a 3 or 4. Frankie Montas might be one of those guys that can kind of show if he can bounce back to his 2019 form, then he could maybe be the number 1 for him. But Eovaldi, Davies has to have a low ERA. And I don't know. And Braylon Marquez is like the 80th best prospect in baseball. I know he's a Cubs guy, but he might come up this year. I think Tyler's draft was interesting. I think he's going to have an okay lineup. He's got some big names, but overall, grade wise, I gave him a D plus.
Yeah, I gave him a D. And as we know, like stud pitchers don't just shake loose off of teams. Guys just don't get rid of stud pitchers. I mean, I gave up Kenta Maeda last year, and it took me getting Cody Bellinger back to get rid of Kenta.
Right.
Like, we just hang on to our pitchers. It's so hard to get pitchers, which is why some teams you saw loading up on arms. And I think some of these guys that are thin on pitching now are going to really struggle to find it. So yeah, his pitching's not good. One of the worst staffs in the league. His offense is okay. It's average, but I don't think I think he's going to find himself near the bottom of the league.
Agreed.
All right, so that wraps up our team grades. I hope you were able to find your grade. We went in alphabetical order there. So we're going to move on to what our predictions for the league are. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric. Why don't you give me your 6 playoff teams that are going to make the bracket this year?
Me and Kyle talked about this at the top of the show. I wasn't totally 100% sure on the playoff structure, so we figured out it is the top team from each division, and then the next 4 just best teams, right? Divisions don't matter after that, correct? So right now the 6 playoff teams I have are myself, I have you, I have your father, I have Jay, I have Peter, and then I have, I said Jay, right?
Yeah.
I have Peter, and then I think I have Krim. Krim is my 6th. Okay. It's tough because the 6th one I got a lot of grades right at C plus.
Yeah.
So that's really where it gets tough. I think there really is a lot of teams in that 6 to 9 range. So it's really tough nailing down a 6th. I'll say Krim for now though.
Okay. All right. My playoffs in this particular order, here are going to be my power rankings. 1, I'm going to go Peter. 2, I'm going to go me. 3, I'm going to go you, Eric. 4, I'm going to go Chad. 5, Jay. And 6, I'm going to shock some people. I'm going to go David Long. Okay. I think he's my meh team. His team is so bland and so average and so lackluster.
And it might just do that good.
This is going to be the 6th seed this year. And he kind of proved it last year. I mean, his kind of middle of the road team. I don't think we gave him a lot of respect at the draft last year. And he ended up being just a middle of the road team. He made a couple moves that ended up working out for him.
Right.
I'm going to give him a little bit of respect. He's going to find that 6th playoff spot. So, with all that being said, Eric, who is your league 2021 summer league champion.
I can't believe I'm saying this because I shouldn't say this because of his track record in fantasy leagues so far, but I am looking for the comeback story of the century in regards to this guy finally getting to the playoffs and doing something about it. I think Jay's team's the best team. I got him as an A minus. I think
Go different direction with that.
yeah, I think he's gonna win. If I had to pick a champion right now based on paper, I think Jay's team's the best team. Again, might put you better prove it, Jay, because like I said, football wise hasn't worked out for you. Baseball wise, we'll see. But I'm going with Jay right now. He's got the best grade for me, so I think he's the best team. That's where I'm going with.
I like Jay's team. I don't think he has the best team right now, but I think he will have towards the end of the year. He'll have the right tools and he'll have the right pieces to make some moves towards the end of the year to have a very good team at the end of the year. My champion this year, without a doubt, is going to be Peter Panagakos. Let me just tell you something. There is no way that Peter Panagakos does not win this league. You hear me, Peter? There is no scenario in this that can happen in this baseball season where you are not walking away from this league holding the trophy, carrying the big bucks in your pocket with a nice fat wallet after your internship's over. You are winning this league, not a doubt in my mind. And I believe I'll come in second place.
So there's a big gap. You're saying you think his team is that much?
Not close. It's not particularly close. Peter's team is going to also stay healthy all year. He's not going to have a single injury, I don't think.
Here we go. I like it.
And I just think that everything is going to fall in the right way for Peter.
I think I know where you're going with this. I agree with you, Kyle.
I don't see any scenario where things just don't work for Peter. So
his team, I think, is perfect. I think A plus. Nothing bad can happen, and in fact, I don't think any of his pitchers will have any issues. They're all going to start 33 games.
No. I look up and down this lineup. I mean, it's just great. No holes anywhere. And every guy he's gonna pick up off the waiver wire is gonna play well.
They're gonna be studs.
All the right trades. It's gonna be very healthy. He is going to walk away, no problems. Just
in all seriousness, though, it is a very good team. But like I said, the concerns with the prospects, then the lack of depth, and then obviously the on base percentage.
He's going to win it next year and the year after too, because of all the prospects he has.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be interesting.
All right, we've been on for 2.5 hours, Eric. It's time for us to get out here. Do you have any parting words?
Nothing really. I hope the Sox keep sucking. There was part of me that was like, man, I'd love 2 good baseball teams. It'd be fun, rah, this and that. But I think the Sox fans are getting a little too rowdy in the chat already. I think it's time to kind of put them down.
Knock them down a few pegs.
Yeah. I mean, when fans are allowed 100% in, they're still going to only probably draw about half their stadium. So, we'll see what happens. But Sox fans, let's not get too hyped. But yeah, go Cubs.
Go Cubs, go. Yeah, I don't think the cell. Yeah, I'm still going to call it the cell. I don't think the cell even needs like attendance limits. I think they just can kind of roll
exactly.
They don't have to worry about social distancing.
They could say 50% and they'd reach their usual total.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. All right, Eric, it has been a pleasure. Best of luck to you this year. Man. Maybe we'll try and do a pod in a few weeks. Maybe a checkpoint pod. We'll talk about some trades, talk about some transactions, and we'll hopefully see you then.
All right, sounds good, buddy.
All right.